Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem. Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. It's the 13th of September. That's, of course, a Wednesday here in a cold Melbourne, episode 139. Dennis Schrader here with Kasper Ozolowski, where last week, things weren't looking too good. I was sick. The voice was going. I felt like, I brought it up last time, I felt like one of the soldiers at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, maybe the one looking for his leg in the middle of the beach. And today, it seems like I've passed over the honors to my dear friend Kasper, who isn't feeling the best today. Are you, Kas?
Yeah, no, not the greatest. I'm sounding all right. I don't have the sexy husky voice that you did last week, but the gypsy flu has definitely been passed on. Like a baton in a relay race, I've tagged in, and it seems like it's going viral all over the world. Poor Ray Borg seemingly had it, so, we're not alone. We're in good company with this whole gypsy flu, but it's an epidemic. And you nailed it. It is cold. It is cold outside here in Melbourne, but we have sexy guests, oh so sexy guests to keep us warm, and it's a real slice of nice this week. I'm really excited. We've got a lot of people that I'm excited to speak to. Coach Wink coming on the program. I mean, obviously John Jones is coach, so there's a lot of things to talk to him about there. Obviously, a lot of things coming from UFC 215 to talk about there. Holly Holm, Chris Cyborg, a lot of questions for Coach Wink. Dan Kelly, a man who we love having on the program. Haven't had him for a while, but he is fighting, returning back at UFC Sydney. One of our favorite guys to get on. So we want to see what's going on with Dan Kelly. And, by the way, the man is having a birthday in about a month and a half, October 31st. So we want to find out what he's doing for his 40th. Urijah Faber returning to the program after a pretty small absence. Coming on to talk about a whole bunch of things. Cody versus TJ, this Snoop cast, some of Snoop Dogg's comments, and just some of the other things that he's been doing to keep busy. Obviously, Paige Van Zandt was talking about passing out and some of the things, and Urijah Faber was witness number one, so we want to talk to Urijah Faber about some of that. Also, the Bullet herself, Valentina Shevchenko, fresh off UFC 215. It was a somewhat controversial loss in the main event against Amanda Nunes. Twitter blowing up, the internet blowing up, everybody scoring it every which way. We've got Valentina. She's been kind enough to jump on and chat with us. Her submission-rated debut on this very episode, and we want to find out how she's feeling a few days removed and what's next for her. And that's not even it. We got more sexy guests, don't we, Dennis?
Like a unicorn running through a rainbow. Sheehan joined us back on the show. A regular that we love having on. Been messaging this guy on Twitter, and the guy gets no sleep. So I want to get to the bottom of this. Is he human? Is he a zombie? What's the deal? Is he Blade? Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's find out. We'll find out later on in the show. But if you guys aren't really interested in finding out more personal details about Sean, we'll also be talking about UFC 217, 3 title fights. Is this too much? We'll figure it out when we get Sean on the program. Also, UFC 215. There's some fights to break down, of course. Figure out what's next for Borg. Should he still get DJ? Possibly at UFC 216. We'll weigh in on it. We'll figure it out. Of course, we'll talk about the main event, Nunes versus Shevchenko, who won that one. And we'll be looking into the future this weekend. Some big fights coming up, especially Luke Rockhold versus David Branch, which I believe Sean will give a sexy little preview of and let us know who he thinks wins that one. And, of course, Canello versus Triple G. So there's a lot going on this weekend when it comes to fighting for fight fans, boxing fans, and just casual fans alike. So we'll be getting into it, talking about it, and Sean will be on the program, Cass. I'm very excited to have him back on the show.
Yeah, that's right. I am beyond excited. Before we get to our first guest, just a quick reminder, keep bringing those sexy iTunes reviews in. We love reading them, and as long as you keep bringing them in, we'll keep reading them. We get a lot of laughs out of them. You guys have been so kind. All of them have been 5 stars up to this point. I mean, it's a great streak. It's like an undefeated streak. You give us whatever you think we're worth, but we appreciate every single one of them, and we promise as long as you keep bringing them in, we will keep reading them. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. Follow us. Put in any of your comments in the YouTube section below if you are watching on YouTube. We want to know what you think as far as any of these interviews. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us during our chat with Sean Sheehan, whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. We love interacting with you guys. We've been doing a whole bunch of that recently. And yes, it is us. We do not have the money to afford social media managers or people who can go on YouTube and write comments for us. It is always us. So by all means, interact with us. We love it. And without further ado, enough rambling from us. We have our first guest on the line. And Dennis, I believe you're introducing him.
All right, guys, our next guest is a show regular. He is one half of one of the best and most elite gyms in the world and coach of fighters such as Holly Holm, Cowboy Cerrone, Alistair Overeem, John Jones, and our very own Tyson Pedro. He is, of course, Coach Mike Winkeljohn, and he's kind enough to join us and return here on the program. Coach, how are you today?
I'm doing really good, guys. I mean, I had a real disappointing weekend this weekend with Tyson, but other than that, I'm doing great.
Right. Well, let's talk about this past weekend. Before we even talk about Tyson, Ray Borg was meant to go there, capture the belt, and bring another belt home to Jackson Winkeljohn. He's supposed to beat Demetrius Johnson. Everybody wants to know what exactly happened.
You know what? Enough. You know what? Here's the deal, guys. I know it's not you guys, but enough. All I can say is this. All I want to say is this. The doctors told Ray he can't fight. Ray wanted to fight, period.
Are you able to tell us what was your reaction, when you found out the fight was off? Obviously, because you were training him for, the last however many weeks to beat Demetrius.
Oh, of course, disappointment. Ray Borg is ready. He's ready. He was ready. He is ready. He's in fantastic shape, looking great. And I was going to put money on him to win the fight. That's it. I just don't want to talk about it. Hopefully the rematch gets set up and we'll go forward.
And obviously, is there anything you can tell us as far as, was it to do with Ray's weight, or do you think the rematch happens at UFC 216, or are you sort of unable to speak about those things as well?
You know what? Not going to speak about either one of those at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. Well, look, we respect that. Let's talk about Mitch Clark, because obviously something else that was a little bit surprising was Rich Clark retiring after UFC 215. We know things didn't exactly go his way, but did you know that Mitch was going to retire going into that fight?
Yeah, I knew there was a possibility of it. You know what? Mitch is just, he's an incredibly smart young man that's capable of doing so many things. And I know it's been biting him for a long time, wondering why in the heck he's doing this fighting thing, where the guys don't make a lot of money, but it's everybody's dream to do it. And he feels that he's capable of fighting with anybody out there in the world, and he's very capable of it. He is so strong. His body lock is so strong, he can take anybody down. But with that being said, I think he was second-guessing things a little bit before the fight. So you can kind of sense it, but fighters sometimes do that, and they go out and have great performances. So it's one of those things that, you have to let the fighter figure it out for themselves.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about it now, looking back on it as a coach? What do you think about his decision to retire?
Oh, I'm happy for him because at the end of the day, fighters are basically big dorks that are trying to make this dream that is not that important as far as the world goes. I mean, there's people out there that are changing the world for the better. It's not really the fighters. It's more entertainment. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love the sport, but with that being said, Mitch, he's got an engineering degree. I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was in, but he's capable of so much more. I mean, that guy, he can be such a leader in so many ways that fighting was just a small step in his journey to greatness.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why people love you as a coach, Wink, because I love the way you put that. There's a lot of stuff out there for fighters to do, and fighting isn't the end-all and be-all. So it's great to see that you have that kind of support for your fighters. Speaking of retirement, we're not sure what's going on with Carlos Condit. It kind of looks like he's back in training, but can you give us any more clarity on whether he'll return and fight again?
No, I cannot give you the clarity on Carlos. You know what? Carlos is he's come by a gym a few times and he's kicked it around, but he's doing some other ventures right now. And Carlos is that same guy. He's that same guy where he doesn't really want to get hit anymore, but he has that fighter attitude with him, and he'll fight with anybody anytime. So it's a tough dilemma when you have a family and you're trying to figure out what's best for your family, versus your dream. And so I think he's in that point right now, where he's not sure if he turns left and goes forward a different place in his life, or if he gets back into fighting. So I think right now he's trying to decide all that.
All right, well, we look forward to figuring out whether he goes left or right. Obviously, as fight fans, we hope that he comes back. We'd understand if he doesn't, though. We mentioned Tyson Pedro at the start of the show. Came out there against Ilir Latifi. Had a lot of success in the fight. Ultimately, didn't go his way. What did you think of the performance from our very own Australian? And what I guess was the biggest lesson from that fight?
Well, experience. We needed experience. There's no doubt about it. He stepped up. I thought he was going to be able to dominate the fight. Honestly, I really did. Tyson didn't let his hands go enough. It's easy for me to say because I wasn't having this big bull trying to take him down and hit him with bombs. So I understand that side of it. But he hurt him a couple times in the fight. I think he threw maybe less than 6 punches in the fight, and I think every one of them hit him. With that being said, just kind of overthought it a little bit. We just need a little bit more experience on some things, a little bit of experience on some moves against the cage, a little bit of more experience on defeating those wrestlers. All I know is Latifi took him down. He did not want to let him up and have to stand with him anymore. He was holding on to him as George St. Pierre would, and just make sure he smothers him and not give him any space. And that was real disheartening because it was very hard for Tyson to get back up.
But, I think in the performance, he still got a lot of, I suppose, a lot of fans got their eyeballs on him. And I think the commentary team gave him a lot of props as well. A lot of people still excited about his development, knowing that he's young and, getting that experience up. On the way home, though, he had a little pit stop at the airport where he jumped on the piano and decided to busk a little bit because he didn't get his fight bonus, Coach Wink. So I'm just wondering, did you get to see his performance in the airport? And if you were walking past, do you reckon you'd drop him a note in the hat to sort of donate to that basking money?
No, I did not see him in the airport. In fact, I think I left before him. So and that's the first I've actually heard about that. So no, I didn't. But Tyson's a character. You know why? That's why he's so well liked at the gym. He's always up. He's friendly. He's happy. Before the fights, he's listening to upbeat, good moral type of music, while everybody else is listening to things with nonstop cuss words and everybody has to pump themselves up in their own way. But Tyson's just that guy that I think most parents want their kids to aspire to be. He has great character, and the kid's gonna be a world champ. So this was just one of those things where he's gonna learn from it and get much better.
What's the thoughts on the hat? The hat that he comes out to the ring in, that sort of Gilligan Island looking hat. Are we a fan of it? Do we like it?
I like it. It gives him character. It makes me smile knowing that that's his thing. He's got this personality, and everybody has to have their thing, and that's part of his aura. And marketing himself and his personality is that he's going to be who he is. He doesn't really care if you like it or not. He's just a fun, go happy young man.
And has he tried to get the hat on you at any point during the training camp? Maybe see if it works with your style. I mean, there's the tank tops, which you love, but I don't know. Maybe the hat would work in that kind of sequence.
No, he never tried to put the hat on me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd want to let him, nor, but I'm sure that he wanted me to have his hat because I might make it look really, really ugly.
The other thing I loved is when he came out to Mariah Carey and Joe Rogan, Cormier, and John Anik just pretty much had no idea what to say. That was probably one of our favorite parts of the pay-per-view. Now, Coach, last time we spoke to you, obviously it was all about Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar, and now, of course, Jon's future is once again unclear. We have to ask, what was your reaction to the news that Jon Jones, did fail his UFC 214 drug test? I imagine it would have been really tough news considering what a great night, it was for Jon and the team.
Oh, man, absolutely terrible news. Shock. There's no way. Jon Jones had been tested multiple times going through the fight camp. He would not do something like that. The problem is the public perception of they think he's got these needles and throwing steroids in his arm when, don't get me wrong, I understand Jon has messed up in the past. He's got caught drinking and driving. He's done some bad things. He's done things that are idiotic, but he's grown up. But as far as taking steroids, what he's been busted for is taking a Viagra Cialis from Mexico that has something in it. That's not steroids, but it came up that way. And if I had to guess, it's going to come out there's going to be something that he took to rehydrate himself after his cut or somewhere in that style at that time that with some kind of, what I want to say, some kind of substance that he thought was just a supplement that someone said, hey, this will make you feel better. It's got electrolytes in it and stuff, but it was tainted. And everybody thinks, yeah, that's just an excuse, but no, really, that's it. That's what it's going to be. And what I've noticed is a lot of these supplement companies, they have a tendency sometimes to throw things in there. And I think if they find out who the supplement company was and which one is tainted, they got a big lawsuit in their hands because it has changed Jon Jones' life. And it's really not his fault.
And it's one of those situations as well, like you said, John had a great performance. It was such a great moment, and now this is happening. And if it is a contaminated drink or anything like that, like you mentioned, the damage is pretty substantial. So what was his reaction to the news, and how is John doing? Because we imagine it would just be so disappointing, so brutal to deal with.
I saw John Jones 2 hours before he found out, and he was up. He's excited. We're talking about the fight, kind of high-fiving, still going through the fight and different things that we talked about might happen in the fight and did happen in the fight, and just enjoying reliving the fight. 2 hours later, all of a sudden I get a phone call, and people say, guess what? And I know he was devastated. I didn't see it when he got the phone call. Of course, he was at a restaurant with one of our other coaches, and but that coach told me he was just devastated. He just stopped in time, and he's just pretty much since then just spent time with his family and been offline. Just kind of staying away from it. But I just let it sink in. He's in disbelief himself. He went from the highest of high to way down in the bottom of the lows, and just it is his fault for not making sure he eats. They take some kind of substance, some kind of supplement, maybe, if that's what it is. But gosh, it's just real disheartening, because I know John Jones is not a cheater. John Jones can fight. He can game plan better than anybody. His strategy is better than anybody. He throws all these things into his mind that's so even better than his athletic ability by far. It has nothing to do with substance abuse.
Yeah, and you mentioned, John was at dinner. His teammate Frank Lester basically called it a straight setup. What do you make of the theory that John's food or drinks were spiked deliberately and somebody intentionally contaminated his stuff so that he failed a test? Do you buy into that in any way, or do you think it was just purely an accident?
No, that would be true evil, and I know there are evil people out there, but I don't think those people would have access to them. I think it was just a mistake. I think it was just one of those situations where a supplement that someone says, hey John, this will make you feel better, this will help with rehydration, or this will help with your cut, or whatever the case is, and John says, okay, if you say so, that type of thing. So I know him and his management have gone through, they're getting everything tested, everything that he has taken, and we'll see what happens.
And something that you mentioned before, something that actually crossed my mind in the past as well, where if it was, say, a tainted supplement, I mean, this would be the second time in a row, and like you mentioned, the damage is done. Even if John comes back, the things that he would have to deal with from fans and critics, etc. And you mentioned, there's a potential, he'd have a lawsuit on his hands. Do you think there would be a lawsuit? Do you think John or maybe someone from the team would sue that supplement company for that damage?
Oh, I would. I mean, we're talking about it changing a man's life. I mean, how much money could he make? What's his career worth? Is it worth $100 million? I mean, that's going to bankrupt the company. I'll be the first one to say, hey, look, here's the deal. If you guys are in the supplement industry and you have a tendency to put anabolics and these different substances in your products just so that the kids go, yeah, this stuff works, and then the FDA comes along and says, hey, you put that in there, and then they have a tendency to pull it out real fast, and then they say, okay, we won't do it anymore. But they've already sold the product, and they keep selling it, and they open up another product, or they file bankruptcy and do it again. Supplement companies are notorious for it. If you go back and start reading some papers on it, and it's not right. It's just not right when they do those type of things just to sell products.
He's still fairly young and in his prime, but a lot of people discussing if you decide to throw the book at John and suspend him for 2 to 4 years. What does that do in your opinion? Do you think John comes back, or is there a real chance this time that he actually moves on from MMA and fans may never see him again?
I don't know. If it's a 4-year thing, I think it could be just that kind of devastation, and which like I said, it's not fair. He messed up in that maybe he took something that someone said, hey, this is fine, but he's not doing what. Thinking I'm taking steroids or something, and that's the part that's terrible. He could be devastated. 4 years, who knows? That's a long time to just spiral downhill where bad things can happen. So that one scares me. If it's a year, John Jones will come back and dominate the world again. I do believe.
But yeah, wow, wouldn't that be something if it is a tainted supplement and we don't see John Jones, a guy who many people thought was the greatest of all time because of that? It would just be insane. Coach, we really appreciate the time. Just quickly before we let you go, because I feel like we're getting greedy, just want to ask, Holly Holm versus Chris Cyborg, UFC 219, are there any updates? Has there been an offer yet? Are there any talks with the UFC? Anything you can tell us?
When is 219? I don't even know when that is. When is that?
I want to say December 30th off the top of my head. It's December. It's
December 30th.
The end of year.
No, we have not had an official offer. So we're waiting for an official offer. That's good. But there has not been an official offer. So I know this is quite funny. The champion of the world is calling out Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Don't usually the challengers call out the champions. That's a curiosity in itself.
And not only is she calling her out, but she's actually putting up posts online, making it look like the fight's been put together already, and just basically just waiting for the UFC to make it official. Why do you think Chris Cyborg is so set on fighting Holly Holm?
Money. Holly's a big draw. Everybody wants to see Holly. They know she had the ability to beat Ronda. She steps up for the big fights. She's back. And she's the best thing the UFC has in the women's division. Holly has more power, I believe, and more marketability than every woman in the UFC put together. And I think Chris sees that. She thinks she can beat her, and she thinks she'll get big pay-per-view numbers and make some money. And I don't blame her.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, one of the biggest fights they can make as far as the women divisions. Last time we spoke to you, and you said there are two big factors, obviously, in Holly fighting Cyborg, and that's the money, and if Holly has enough time to add size and prepare for 145. And we're sort of getting closer now to December 30th. Does Holly have enough time to get ready for that potential date? And is there sort of a cutoff point where if the UFC don't make a real offer that you guys are going to have to say, look, there just isn't enough time?
Yeah, they need to make an offer pretty soon. There's no doubt about it. But Holly will take it. They just got to make the right offer. That would be that. I mean, right now we're looking at, do we fight Amanda Nunes for the title? They really want to give that to Raquel Pennington, I think they're saying. Holly doesn't want to sit on the shelf. She wants the world title. She really wanted to get back at Shevchenko, so I know she was hoping Shevchenko would win the title. But this is where we're sitting right now. And Chris Cyborg is out there, and Holly, I think, wants to knock off another legend and just step up and do it again. So it all comes down to money and what the UFC is willing to cough up to have Holly fight her.
And speaking of Shevchenko, just quickly, what did you think of the fight between Nunes and Shevchenko? Because a lot of different analysts had different takes on who they thought won that one.
It's interesting. I hadn't even gone into the last round. I think Amanda with her takedowns won. She secured it close. I could see it being a draw. I mean, it was that kind of close to it. But the problem is Amanda, was kind of always with the pressure. Shevchenko, I thought, hit her more times. There's no doubt about it. But I think Amanda edged out scoring when it comes to rounds. I mean, I think maybe Shevchenko, if you count the amount of total strikes that hit, she probably hit Amanda more times, but you can't judge fights that way. You have to judge fights round by round, and I thought Amanda edged it out that last round.
I think this fight's been one of the toughest fights to score all year, but I definitely don't disagree with you, Coach. Just before we let you go, obviously you've talked about, how much the UFC are willing to cough up as far as Holly Holm fighting next. From a coach's perspective, what do you prefer, Holly fighting Amanda or the Chris Cyborg fight? Any one of them stand out a little bit better to you?
No, they're both the same. They both have different type of problems that we have to solve. Amanda has a really good range. She throws really hard punches, just like Chris. But they're different on their approach to fights. Chris is real traditional and comes hard. Amanda can throw things that are a little more chaotic and not the normal type of strikes and or techniques you're used to seeing. So they pose different problems that have to be solved. But I'm okay with either one. Holly's okay with either one. Her manager, Linda Fresquez, is going to be talking to the UFC and find out what's best for Holly in the future.
Well, things are exciting right now, Coach. There's no doubt about it. And we appreciate you. Thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedule for jumping on the program. Guys, make sure to visit jacksonwink.com because there's a Jackson Wink MMA adventure that you can become a part of. It's the ultimate MMA fan experience like no other. You get to live in the door rooms with the pro and amateur MMA fighters, attend the amateur MMA programs and cross-train with pro fighters, receive one-on-one sessions from the coach himself, Coach Jackson or Coach Winkeljohn. So much fun stuff, a lot more stuff that you get, T-shirts, personalized training videos, tons of pictures. You become a part of the elite MMA team. You even get a shout out on their social media. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Make sure to jump on the website, sign up. Me and Casper didn't have to do this program week by week. I'm sure we'd be there. making everybody look bad, coach, and running up those hills. Who am I kidding? We'll be slower than anyone else. We'll be slower than anyone else.
You guys make part of the adventure program. We'll just throw you in the video class.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Make John Jones feel better by just beating us up every day. We're like Australian punching bags. But guys, make sure to follow Coach on Twitter as well at MMA Coach Wink. Again, Coach, it's such an honor having you on the program. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest leads Dad's Army into battle against Elias Theodora at UFC Sydney, defeating such names as Rashad Evans and Chris Camozzi, to name a few. He now joins us on the program. Dan Kelly, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you, mate?
Very good. Always good to chat to you guys.
Big Dan, thanks for joining us. We noticed you took a little bit of a break from social media after your last fight, UFC New Zealand. A few less posts here and there. So tell us, what have you been up to since the last fight? It feels like we need more Dan in our lives.
I was actually over in China coaching the national team.
Oh wow!
There's no Facebook in China. That's probably why. So yeah, not an intentional thing, but yeah. So yeah, for 2 or 3 weeks I was over there. So yeah, no social media.
Oh, wow. What were you training him for? Because remember last time you were training the national team for Rio. What were you training them, the national team for this time?
We had a couple of competitions over there. So one, it was a place called Hohhot, which is north of Beijing. So it's the judo circuit's a little bit like a tennis circuit now. So there's Grand Prix and competitions all around the world. And yeah, so we went there, and then we went to Taipei for another tournament.
Well, hopefully you don't have any Nick Kyrgioses on your team, am I right? Let's talk about China, though, just quickly, because I imagine it would be a bit of a culture shock with some of the boys on the team. Any funny stories from the trip? Anything interesting you can share with us?
They're actually not very polite people, to be honest. They don't understand the concept of lining up or anything like that. So I'll give you an example. We were out the front of the hotel waiting for a taxi. There's a group of 6 of us. And then another group of Chinese people came and stood the other side of us from the way the traffic was going. One of them walked 10 meters down the road, flagged a taxi, drove past us to the other group, and gave them the taxi. They knew we were standing there waiting for a taxi. Yeah, little things like that accumulated over 2 or 3 weeks, and I was very happy to get out of there.
Accumulated to the point where somebody got uchimated by the end, right? Straight into the pavement.
No, it was close, but by the time we got out of there, I'm like, get me out of this place, please.
That
was good.
Was it nice, though? Because obviously it's such a different setting, and obviously, you had UFC New Zealand, you had the fight, you had training for so long, and then you kind of go off and you're not really in your own sort of bubble. You're focusing on something completely different from MMA, completely different from UFC, and you get to just kind of, I guess do something different. Was that a bit nice for you, though?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I'm still heavily involved coaching my athletes at my club, and 4 of them were over there as well. So that was good. But yeah, it's always good. I had been locked in well before the fight anyway, so I knew that I was going over to do that.
And of course, you're talking about your Gym Resilience Training Centre in Footscray in Melbourne, which is a place, by the way, anyone listening who's planning on travelling down to Australia or any Melbourneites listening need to check out ASAP. Tell us a little bit about some of the killers you got going at the gym right now, Dan. What's the latest update?
Our latest update, we've actually done a little bit of a renovation. We've got three walls that are padded now. We've got some MMA guys starting to come through. I've got a guy, Ben Sassoli, who's fighting in November, and then another young guy, Sai, hopefully will fight next year, and also a judo girl who's crossing over. She's Commonwealth Games representative, Sarah Collins. Hopefully next year she'll start fighting MMA as well. She's having a Thai fight in a couple of weeks just to build up her striking level a little bit, and then she'll cross over as well. So yeah, it's a little bit exciting now.
Oh, that's awesome. And obviously we've been in the facility a while ago. That's where we shot some of the great techniques that you were kind enough to give us. And that was already a great facility. So the fact that you guys have sort of made some changes and upgraded and renovated, it's great to hear. And obviously you got a slew of new talent. Let's talk about UFC New Zealand, because We're a little while removed. Obviously, it wasn't the result you were hoping for. Tell us, Dan, have you sort of had a chance to look back on that Brunson fight, and what are your thoughts on how it all played out, and now that it's been a couple of months?
There's not much to say. I made a couple of little errors and got caught. You can't make mistakes like that against top 10 guys. It was very disappointing because I was on a good roll, and back to the drawing board. It's not that we have to change a whole heap of stuff. It's more tweaking what we're doing, but also I've got to manage my time a little bit better too. I did all the training that was required and took it seriously, but it's more the downtime and the in-between times that I do too much, and I need to be able to recover properly in between training sessions. I mean, it's not that I was fatigued or anything like that. It's just, it's all a very big accumulation towards the end, and anytime you lose, it's never good. I hate losing, but it's also an opportunity to assess where you're at and make any little changes that are needed so you get a positive result the next time.
When you say things in downtime, what exactly are you talking about? Are you talking about sort of doing extra training when you're not supposed to be training, or do you mean sort of like other activities, family-related, other things that are sort of pulling your attention?
Business and coaching related mostly. I mean, I run my gym as well as coaching guys as well, and I'm not very good at saying no to people when they ask for things to do odds and ends. So, that's the big thing. This time we've got structures and things in place that are about 5 weeks out, 6 weeks out, but I don't do anything other than worry about training. So it's better. I mean, especially when I've gotten away with it up until a point, but now I'm fighting better guys, and I need to be able to have that extra time, and I've got really good people around me to help anyway.
And I guess the thing about it is as well, your schedule is pretty busy as a fighter. I mean, some fighters only fight once or twice. This will be your third fight when you fight in Sydney in November. Tell us a little bit about, I suppose, the goal of keeping such a busy schedule, because a lot of fighters will say, look, for a lot of fighters, 3 fights may be a little bit too much because the training camps, recovering from injuries, et cetera, but then at the same time, do you feel like you're just getting to that sweet spot as an athlete and you want to sort of capitalize on it with having as many fights as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what else am I going to do with my time? We can rest when we're retired or dead. So just keep busy, and as long as I'm good to go, I need probably 10 or 12 weeks to prepare for a fight, and this is perfect. Yeah, I want to fight 3 times a year for the rest of my career, so this is fine.
Nice. And obviously you've had some big wins lately. Talk to us about Elias as an opponent choice. Did you have any other opponents, any other options, or was he sort of the only guy presented to you for Sydney? And how are you feeling about the matchup?
He was the only guy presented. I'm pretty sure he called me out. He wanted to fight me, from what I can gather.
Why do you think he did that?
I know him. I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's an easy fight. That's what most people think when they call me out. We spent a lot of time together in the house for about 7 weeks, and yeah, I think he thinks he's suited to fighting against slow, plodding fighters, and that he can pick apart and move and use his angles and direction changes to kind of not let me grab hold of him. So I think he thinks it's a good matchup for him in that regard. It'll be nice for me to fight him though, because he's beaten a couple of guys who have beaten me, and he also won the show that I was on. So I was really happy when they offered me the matchup.
I feel like when you retire, they can do a coffee table book of all the tweets and call-outs of opponents wanting to fight you down in Australia, and then at the bottom it'll say, and then Dan Kelly beat him in Australia, and then Dan Kelly beat him in Australia. Just as a little example, but look, it is Dad's army versus the best hair in MMA. So let's get real here, Dan. Is Elias really the pound-for-pound king of hair in the UFC, or is he a little bit overrated in that area?
Oh, goodness me. He really does take that seriously, doesn't he? His whole main event and these pert sponsorship. And, I think he just tried to find a niche, and I don't think he had anything else, so he went with hair. Good luck to him.
Would you be willing to put the hair on the line, a hair versus hair match? I feel like it's already an exciting fight, but it sweetens things. And traditionally, he's been a bit hesitant to accept challenges like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what have I got to lose? It's grey and short. I mean, me getting rid of my hair is actually probably a good thing. He's got a lot more to lose than I have, so I doubt that he'd be happy to put that on the line.
I feel like it wouldn't be your hair. You'd have to put up like your knee pad or something about you that you don't want to give away.
My smelly knee brace.
Yeah, I feel like that knee pad's actually going to go up in a museum in a Melbourne sporting institution, but when you retire, because that thing has done wonders. But let's talk about Elias's career for a second, because he's only had 2 losses in his career thus far. A lot of criticism for him from fans, though, that he's not really an exciting fighter and grinds out a lot of his wins. Even if he loses in the UFC, those losses have been kind of grinds as well. How do you sort of rate his run and style thus far, and I suppose his performances in the UFC?
I think he's very smart tactically, and TriStar, where he trains or does quite a bit of his training there, very good at getting a good strategy together, and he's very good at sticking to it. I don't know that the fights where he's been put under pressure and his plan hasn't worked, he's struggled to come up with a second plan to overcome his opponent. Fight's a fight. I mean, the fans need to enjoy it, but he's very smart and calculating with how he fights, and very annoying from the looks of things.
Oh wow, the trash talk's getting started. Does this kind of matchup, does it appeal to you? And obviously we know you've got you've got Olympic level judo and high level grappling abilities. How do you think you'll handle his wrestling, and do you think there's a chance that maybe in this fight he stays away from taking you down, and maybe he looks to strike with you in this fight?
He'll stay away. He'll stay away and run around and dance around exactly the same way he fought Sam Alvey is how he'll fight me, I think. I don't think he wants to clinch up with me, which is what I'll be trying to force him to do. But I've got some little tricks. I think I'll be doing lots of spinning kicks, spinning back fists, flying knees.
Wow.
So I'm going to surprise him with a few new things. I've been drinking at the Fountain of Youth, and 40s the new 30, and I'll be flying in there.
I feel like we're going to see the Anderson Silva of Footscray Melbourne in Sydney in November, Dan. This thing sounds exciting. It's going to be spinning shit. This is going to be great.
You ready for a crane kick?
Oh, awesome. I can't wait. GIF it up and throw it on the Submission Radio website. I was going to say, make a T-shirt out of it, maybe. I was going to say, you mentioned how you were both in the house, and that's, of course, from Tough Nations. You were Team Australia. He was Team Canada. What are some of the things that you remember about him from that time in the house? Are there any funny stories, anything that stands out to you? What were you guys like, sort of living together?
He was loud, a little bit annoying. He was funny. He was fun, but yeah, and I remember him, again, being very calculated in his fights in the house. He did exactly what he needed to do to win. If he thought he had an advantage over someone wrestling, he'd take him down. If he thought he has an advantage over someone striking and their wrestling's better, then he'll move and kick and stay away and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I won't say he was, he wasn't the most annoying person in the house, but yeah, so it is what it is. I want to get this one. It'd be nice to beat him, considering he won the show.
Well, I was going to say, considering that he obviously beat Sheldon Westcott, who, Sheldon Westcott originally beat you in the show, do you think that he'll sort of be underestimating you going into this fight, judging you based on your performance in that house?
Absolutely, that one, and he also beat Sam Alvey, and Sam Alvey beat me in less than a minute, so I'm sure that he thinks this is going to be a walk in the park for him. So, the thing is, he matches up, in my opinion, not too bad with me, so I'm not too worried. And obviously, we normally have a reasonably good game plan going in. And yeah, I'm really excited for the matchup from that regard. I can put to bed a few demons, and I can tick a few boxes if I win this fight.
The funny thing about this matchup to me is, you guys had the opportunity to fight when you were on the show together, and all that stuff. And now, all this time later, all these years later, you guys are fighting in Sydney, which is pretty funny. I'm just wondering, in this situation, even, you mentioned that you guys were in the house together, on the show together, but in a lot of ways, is it going to make it a little bit sweeter knowing that he won the Tough title in that season? And if you beat him, in a lot of ways, it kind of shows you were one of the better middleweights in that house?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a validation thing. I mean, when I first got into the UFC, it was about showing that I was at that level and belonged there. I've proved that now. Now this is about going, I was the best guy on that show, and me getting the opportunity to fight him is exactly that. Is me going, no, I was the best guy. It was just, it wasn't my day in the house that day, and I've proven now where we've both got our own training camps and we're both prepared fully and we're both experienced now. We both have the same amount of fights that I'm the better guy.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, obviously your first fight in the UFC was in Sydney for the Rockhold Bisping card, and here you are fighting in Sydney again. But just for a second, take us back to that first fight you had with the UFC. Well, what was your standout memory from the entire experience?
Oh, nerves. I was very, very nervous. It was all so new. Everything seemed so much shinier and more exciting and more nervy. And now it's like, it's just part of the process you go through. But getting to see all these awesome fighters. I remember chatting to Matt Brown before I fought. He was in the hotel because he was a guest fighter there, and I'm a big Matt Brown fan. Got to meet Bisping. So, yeah, it was really cool. And getting the win in the first round as well in that fight, that was massive for me. That was a big validation that I deserved to be there. And the guy I fought, Luke Zachary, had already had 2 fights in the UFC by then. He was 1-1. So it was a really big deal.
I think the other big piece of news is before you step into the octagon in November for UFC Sydney on November 19th, there's the matter of celebrating a major birthday on October 31st as you turn the big 4-0. So tell us, what's happening here? Is there not a major celebration planned for this huge birthday?
Yeah, I've decided I'm not turning 40 this year. I'm turning 40 next year.
What are you going to do? Are you sweeping this one under the rug? I feel like the family and the friends would be disappointed if you didn't do something big.
Well, maybe after the fight, but I'll be sweeping it under the rug from before. This is too important a matchup to worry about anything else other than that. And yeah, I'm not that keen on turning 40, so I'm quite happy for it just to slide past, and we'll worry about it later.
Yeah. Well, we'll be ready and awaiting invites just whenever you have that, Dan. So just letting you know. And the other thing is, like, it's a big achievement. Most fighters, they can, sort of barely last in their prime. We're seeing guys retiring a lot early these days. Mitch Clark retired recently. He was in his early 30s, and you're 40 in the UFC and is still a major run. Did you ever think that you'd be here, especially at this age, especially when you consider your run in the Ultimate Fighter? Was it a bit hard to envision, coming all this way back then?
If you're talking about from the Ultimate Fighter and getting the opportunity, I consider that I'm in my prime right now.
Yeah.
So it's all good for me. I don't. That's why I'm not that. I want to think about 40 and because it's a fair slap in the face. 30 didn't bother me at all, but 40, it's middle age. So that's why, to be honest, I'm not thinking about it that much. I'm more thinking about how I'm going, how I'm fighting. Obviously, the last fight was horrible, but the fight at the beginning of the year was good. So, yeah, I think that as long as my body holds up and it's all good, then I don't think the age means anything at all.
And of course, the thing about turning 40 while you're in this UFC is you spend all your bonuses on fast convertibles during that midlife crisis. But of course, we know that's not going to happen. But I was going to say, Dan, we know that Brunson was a bit of a bump in the road, and beating Elias gets you right back in the mix. But tell us, once you do win in Sydney, what is the plan for 2018? What do you envision?
Fight 3 times, try and get ranked again. That's it. I'm not going to worry about opponents or anything like that. But, fight 3 times, get back towards the top 15 again, because I did pop up there for a little while this year. And then, obviously, after the Brunson fight, popped out again. So beating Elias probably sets me back up again. But you know what? Just keep going, keep fighting. After this fight, hopefully I renegotiate again contract-wise, and then we just keep carrying on.
Oh, is this the last fight in your contract, Dan?
No, it's my 3rd fight in a 4-fight contract, but they normally negotiate after the 3rd fight.
Okay, gotcha.
So.
All right, well, that'll be exciting. As we wrap up this nice chat, a prediction seems like an appropriate way to finish. So give us a lowdown, Dan. In your mind, how is Dan Kelly winning at UFC Sydney?
I reckon I'll stop him 2nd or 3rd round. He's never been stopped, but I think I can stop him 2nd or 3rd round, either submission or ground and pound.
Well, I'll tell you what, it'll be an exciting morning in Sydney in November for UFC Sydney. Can't wait to watch the fight, Dan. And guys, make sure to follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Kelly Judo and Instagram, Daniel Kelly Judo. And of course, go to the Resilience Training Center. It's located in Footscray. It's a fantastic facility. We've shot a bunch of techniques there, and now it's renovated. There's padding on the wall, so less people die from judo throws into the wall, which is good to hear, Dan. You guys can check that out at www.resiliencetrainingcenter.com. It's actually a really great stuff. The time that we spent over there, there's a family vibe. You know, Dan's hands-on, the family's hands-on, and there's a lot of high-level talent going through there. A lot of UFC fighters like Jake Matthews stopping by like that. So, guys, make sure to go check it out. It's a top-level training facility. Dan, we wish you a very happy secret 40th birthday. I got a guy that I can hire. He changes Wikipedia pages. We can switch it around to 29 if you'd like. And then we look forward to doing a later birthday party in Sydney after the big win. Thanks for coming on the program.
Pleasure. Thanks heaps, guys. Always good to chat with you.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys, our next guest is an official UFC Hall of Famer. He is a pioneer and still to this day holds the record for most submission wins in UFC and WEC history. He is also a former WEC champion. You know him as the California Kid, Urijah Faber. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today, man?
Going good. How are you guys?
No, we're good. We're good. It sounds like you're on your way somewhere, and you've been a busy man. I mean, we're happy to have you back on the show, but it's been about 9 months since you officially hung up the gloves. So you got to tell us, how's the retired life treating you, and what are some of the many ways that you've been keeping busy?
Oh, geez, man. I mean, it does not seem like retired life. I know I stopped, fighting people for a living, but things have been busier, and it's been more action-packed, and it's like more pressed for time. So a little bit of everything, developing the team and the gym. We're having a big grand opening actually on Saturday, 10 to 5, where we're having live music. We have a bunch of, well-known artists that are doing a mural on the wall and
nice,
all sorts of cool stuff. They're doing a little entertainment stuff. I was in The Rock's new movie, Rampage.
Really? What were you doing there? What kind of role you got there?
It was a small role. It was, I was part of a little mercenary group. But I don't think I'm supposed to really say what was going on. But I was alongside Joe Manganiello and a couple other big name guys for it's a small part, but it was a good experience. And I've been doing some putting together some projects myself. Did the Snoop cast. That was 8 weeks. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
We basically did commentary and watched the Contender Series. Watched all these young guys scrapping for their dreams. Then just handling business, man. All the regular stuff that I'm a part of on a daily basis here in SAC.
Yeah, talk to us about this Snoop cast, because obviously that's one of the main things that people have been seeing you on recently. How was that like for you? And did you know Snoop Dogg prior to this gig? Because obviously you guys are both California guys, or was this the first time you'd met him?
This was the first time I had met him. I did. I've run into his kids in Whole Foods in Las Vegas a couple times, and I've always been a big fan of his, so I felt like I know the guy. But that was the first time we met, and the guy's a crack up, man. He's definitely a good dude, and a unique way to watch fights, that's for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people, obviously, we're all fans of Snoop's. He's an OG when it comes to hip hop, a huge fan base all over the world. But not many people know what Snoop is like to hang out with, especially off camera. So, do you have any funny stories from your 8 weeks spent with Snoop, especially stuff that we may have not seen during the Snoop cast?
I think the biggest thing with Snoop was, true to form, he just chain smokes blunts. And it seemed like everybody wanted an opportunity to get a picture with the guy, and he was super obliging and was puff given to anybody that walked in his trailer, and he actually had some fun little moments in the octagon where he was trying out techniques and doing spin kicks and stuff like that. So I started naming a bunch of moves after him, stuff I had seen him mess around doing. So anytime anybody would do a move in the fight, we'd name it a Snoop-esque type move, like the Snoop copter kick and like the schoolyard or the alley back trip, like, he had some funny stuff to say, man. That guy's a crack up.
Ah, that's awesome. I'm just wondering, did you have a bit of a hang sesh in his trailer one of those times? And if so, what was that like? And did you partake in a bit of puff puff give?
Well, it's kind of hard not to feel some sort of effect hanging out with the guy a little bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah, his trailer was pretty hot box. But, yeah, I go out there and BS. We were talking some business. I'm trying to get him in a movie that we're putting together, and I think we'd have a cool little part for him. And, talked about some T-shirt ideas. And so I was spending a little time in there. I'm not, a big dude when it comes to smoking a lot of weed, so I try to keep to the gin and juice.
So tell us, now that you're looking back at the 8 weeks and obviously the commentating experience, it was somewhat new for you in this situation and surroundings that you were in, and you were paired up with Snoop. Now that you look back on it, how do you sort of evaluate how Snoop did and how it all played out, and the sort of the partnership that you guys had doing the Snoopcast?
Man, I thought he did amazing. The funny thing is, what you get with Snoop is just a guy that's being extremely real and reaction. It was cool. It was just a different type of eyeball on the fights. He's a guy that's just saying exactly what he sees. If a guy's laying on his back, he's not thinking, oh, is he going to go for a knee bar? He's thinking, why is the guy laying on his back? So he has a good knowledge of the sport from a spectator level, but it was fun to kind of teach him and just realize, like, this is just purely watching a fight with Snoop Dogg, not him having to be biased, not him having to do this. Even I made a joke that he was going to be banned from the first fight after the Conor McGregor fight because I think he was probably drunk and had ended up saying some stuff that probably pissed a bunch of people off. But I mean, the guy's just real, so I could appreciate that, and I had a lot of fun. The way he treated me and other people was pretty great. He was a gentleman and as real as it gets.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I'm glad you answered that because we were curious. A lot of fighters, obviously campaigning to have Snoop fired. A lot of people, in the comment section on Twitter saying, he's so disrespectful. But it's good to hear from someone like yourself as a fighter that, you didn't really take any of that stuff too seriously. And why would you? It is Snoop Dogg after all. I'm just curious, sort of you being a competitor your whole life, obviously you're talking about how your life is super busy. You got a lot of projects, a lot of businesses. You got this movie with The Rock. How have you been able to feed the competitive itch since retiring, Urijah?
Well, last night I went live goes with some of the top fighters on the planet, the top fighter, Cody Garbrandt, and then a whole host of other studs that were in on jiu-jitsu practice. Got a fat lip, got a swollen ear, my neck got all kinked up, so I'm not missing too much other than the big, time in the lights. I get in and coach the guys quite a bit, and I'm mentoring a lot of the guys as a coach and just, as someone they can lean on. So I enjoy that part of it. There's a little bit of me that's like, thinking it might be fun to get in there scrapping. But I did a competition. I competed against a guy named Meow, who's one of the top jiu-jitsu players on the planet. And we had a good match. I took that match and I was going to train real hard for it. And then I got that movie gig that was a 10-day commitment in Atlanta. And then I had a fishing trip that I told Chad I would do months prior. So I didn't really get to train much. And I went in there and we had went to 6 overtimes and he won on an advantage time for having more time on my back. But it was fun, man. It was a good little way to test myself and to stay, on point.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you, I mean, you bring Chad up, and he's someone that people haven't really, I suppose, spoken about in a while. But I mean, for a long, long time, Chad Mendes was, considered to be one of the, best, fighters in his division and considered to be, a future champion. Obviously, things didn't work out his way with the testing. We all know what happened. But how's he doing? Because we imagine it must be incredibly difficult for him to have to stay away from the sport during, his prime. And is he ready to come back when the suspension ends and he's welcome to do so? Is he, I suppose, is he supposed counting down the days before he can make his return to the octagon?
Yeah, Chad's super excited to get back in and fight, and don't get it twisted. I'm sure he was disappointed, but he also was forced to just hunt for however long. So that's what he's been doing. He's been building his fins and feathers business, and that's his real passion, is the hunting. So he comes in and you know, being a super athlete and being so good, he's on top of his game, but most of his time spending doing other stuff that he loves. So he's just doing all things that he loves at all times. He's just recently married and been doing all these hunting and fishing trips. So it's pretty cool to see a guy take a little bump in the road and just turn it into something positive, and he'll be back and he'll be stronger than ever.
Because, I mean, some people, I suppose, have forgotten about him in a lot of ways. But when he comes back, I mean, a lot of people, the big question a lot of people wondering is, you know, will he still be as good as he was before he left? So to yourself, when you look at him, if he does make his return, you know, do you believe he still has that one last run or a few more runs left in him, and he can still be one of the elite guys in the featherweight?
Absolutely. I mean, his headspace, where he's at mentally, like just about happiness and enjoying life, which in my opinion is one of the most important parts of this game, is at an all-time high. You know, the guy knows how to love life. Like I said, he's recently married, and his body's healed, and he's got a little bit of a hunger that he was maybe missing a little bit before. So I'm excited to see him, you know, back on the scene after basically a dream vacation, traveling the world, doing what he loves, and continue the reign. So, and the you know, the landscape has changed as far as runnings for being a you know, contender. He's going to jump right back in and be a top contender, and you know, start, you know, turning heads again.
For sure. I mean, the featherweight division, there's a lot of good young up-and-comers, but I feel like a guy like Chad Mendes is needed to sort of come back in and have another fresh sort of option. You mentioned that the times are changing. Obviously, one of the changes we're seeing is Paige Van Zandt. She's moving up to 125. She's basically said that the weight cuts to 115 are brutal. She can't do it anymore. She's obviously gone to, you know, train elsewhere, but she did say recently how, you know, she was passing out the last few times, and, you know, you even had to come and save her on one occasion. Just curious, what do you remember from that incident, and how did you sort of save her, Urijah?
Well, the two of us were both cutting weight, and I cut a lot of weight as well. That was in Sacramento, and we were on a group text, and everyone was checking in on kind of how the weight was going, and I you know, was like, I'm 2 pounds over, 1 pound over, and Paige just had kind of a moment of panic, and actually I talked to her best friend that was up there with her, and she's like, I can't cut any more weight. I can't, like my body's not doing it. Like, she was feeling really, really bad. And so before I went and reported, I was on weight myself. I went up to her room and just set her straight. I put her through you know, the things that needed to be done in order to get her over that final hump, and gave her exact instructions what to do, and kind of did a check on her body to make sure that everything was functioning okay, and we got her right over the mark. But yeah, she's had a difficult time, and people always forget about, you know, the fact that she's a strong, athletic girl. So because she carries it so well and she makes things look easy, that's a big cut for her. And I've had a text with her recently where she sent me a picture of her standing on a scale 131 or 132, just looking lean. And I mean, that's a good place to be after practice, being 6 or 7 pounds over. When I was a world champ at 145 pounds, I was having about the same weight cut. You know, I was coming down from like 51 to 52 to make 45. Sometimes I get up to 53 or 54. I was trying to gain weight, but I think it's going to be a healthy transition for her.
From all the weight cuts, obviously, you know, you've had such a wealth of experience. You've done a lot. You've seen a lot over the years. How bad would you say they were, you know, compared to some of the other ones that you've seen? Where were they ranked? And also, how much do you think those cuts sort of affected her performances at 115? Did we ever really see the real Paige? Do you think she can sort of become a champion potentially at 125?
You know, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, you give up different things when you go up a weight. I've done it. I've been at 35s. I've been at 45s.
I felt great when I didn't have to cut weight. My weight cuts were big weight cuts. I mean, I've done it for years as far as a wrestler goes, so I was very familiar with it. But, I mean, it got to a point where, you know, I was cutting – I'd put on, you know, between 18 and 23 pounds in a 12-hour period after a weight cut. So, you know, I don't have my finger on the pulse of her training right now because she's been out in Oregon, but I still manage her and am pretty involved in her career, and I may actually go head out there and spend a few days to check up on her and everything. But she seems to be really, really happy with what she's got going up there. She's back in her hometown, you know, where she originally is from, and you know, in a great place. So I'm expecting to see a great performance for her. She's got a very tough opponent, someone that's kind of understated because of the win-loss record as of late. But Jessica Ai is a very, very tough challenge, and she's coming down a weight, and Paige is going up a weight. So I'm curious to see, but we're thinking Paige is going to get her.
And it's going to be a fascinating fight. I think fans are really excited for this one. I've always wanted to ask you this, Urijah, because you did mention you've been cutting weight for a really, really long time. Obviously a wrestler yourself and been doing it from a young age, knowing how to do it properly. But, you know, we always get fighters talking about some of the after effects of cutting weight for a while, you know, issues with organs, problems with their body. Now that you're retired, have you noticed any issues with cutting weight for such a long time? Or because you've done it properly, have you noticed that there's no real lingering effects?
No, there's no lingering effects. I mean, the one thing now in retirement is just being a little bit more aware of calorie consumption. You know, as an athlete, you're training for hours and hours and hours on a day, and so you have to eat so many calories, and so you get in the habit of just stuffing yourself and then wearing it all off. So I'm a little more conscious of you know, eating when I'm hungry and making sure I get workouts in when I, you know, before I eat, and just having my finger on the pulse. How would I be had I not ever cut weight? I don't know. I mean, how would I be had I not been a top athlete for 20 some odd years? I'd probably look a lot worse. So I think the give and the get has been about right.
Yeah, and obviously you're still looking really good in retirement, so obviously you're treating yourself very well. Before we let you go, Urijah, of course we can't let you go without bringing up Cody's first title defense, UFC 217, which is just around the corner. One of the things we notice, sort of when you look at names at 135, the ones that really stand out, there's sort of a triangle of guys, and that's obviously Cody, Dom, and TJ. Not to say that there aren't any other contenders, but considering sort of all the hours of sparring, you know, that TJ and Cody have had in the past, and also that Cody's already beaten Dom, do you think that TJ is Cody's toughest remaining test in the division at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've known TJ for years. I've probably fought TJ more times than I've fought anybody. Maybe him and Joseph Benavidez and Chad, actually, but probably TJ the most because he liked to spar so much. He's a tough dude. He's a very tough dude. He's a competitive guy, but Cody is the new breed of mixed martial artists. And TJ's, you know, we were watching tape the other day with all our coaching staff, and you know, just looking at the matchup, we're all pretty confident that Cody's going to have a big edge here. And we know TJ so well. I mean, I trained with him, trained alongside with him, you know, helped coach him, had him help coach me for 6 years from the beginning till, you know, he won, you know, the fight before he lost the title. So we know him really well. We know his personality. We know his strengths. We know some of his weaknesses, and TJ and Cody used to go at it, man. They used to go at it, and that was when Cody was 1-0. They were a tit for tat. So we're excited for the matchup. We're excited to have Cody healthy, and it's going to be a great fight. And Cody's definitely going to have the edge.
And that kind of brings up a story that I read earlier in the week about that appearance you and Cody had in the Joe Rogan Experience, where, you know, the fact brought up that Chris Holdsworth a few years ago was allegedly kneed by TJ during a sparring session in the head. You know, obviously there was a shocking thing and a shocking discovery to a lot of people that, you know, TJ would act that way sometimes in practice. But from a coach's standpoint, and you being the owner of the gym, how did you handle situations like that? Because I imagine it would be incredibly difficult, but it's not something that you'd want in your gym as well.
Well, I mean, there's no secret about that. And if you even watch old interviews where I'm talking about TJ, we talk about that part of him and having to, you know, work with him as an individual that is working with him as an individual that is known for having an extreme temper. And that was one of the things that we worked on fixing him and having to talk to him outside of the cage, kneeing people when we're boxing, or hitting people after the bell, or if you're not watching him with a younger guy, elbowing when you're not supposed to, like that kind of thing. There's no secret, and I don't think TJ would deny the fact that that's been an issue for a lot of years. I didn't really want to talk about the whole, I don't know if you saw the Joe Rogan Experience, but I didn't really want to talk about it because it's a hard conversation for Chris to talk about, and it's an emotional thing for him, and that's his business really. So, it was a difficult thing, and it was something that we worked on. And, when you have a family setting, there's always these issues, but it's still within the family, So, at this point, TJ is no longer part of the family, as you know, and things come out, but it's still something that is Chris's deal. And if he wanted to put it out there a long time ago, he didn't really want to be a spectacle like that, and I can respect that,
Yeah, for sure. We don't. Yeah, I watched it and I saw the sort of awkwardness when Joe Rogan was bringing it up, and I could see how much you didn't want to talk about it. You don't need to give us the details on what exactly happened. I'm just curious more from your perspective, and this is a question that I see a lot of journalists ask. Why? I guess the question would be why keep TJ on the team after something that serious? Was there ever thought of like, look, there are a certain amount of strikes, and you've either reached your strikes or you're close to reaching your strikes?
Well, I mean, it comes down to, people making their case for what happened, etc. And, it was something that we had to actually work on, it was a controlling of his temper. And I know people that went to college with TJ and had known that it was an issue before. And, when it becomes endangering other people, that's a different issue. But conversations been had, timeouts, that kind of thing. In retrospect, do you kick someone out once it's crossed a different line, or do you catch them every single time, or what's the deal? It's just kind of a slippery slope. And again, I'm training alongside everybody, and TJ was always really respectful to me because I was the team leader and things like that. He would have more of an issue with guys that he felt maybe should not be getting the better of him and things like that. So it's kind of a hard, in retrospect, you see the things adding up and having to defend, but we're in a brutal sport. So it's hard to kind of decipher and say, okay, we're trying to beat each other up and hurt each other. If somebody loses their temper or this or that, when do you draw the line? But I think TJ grew up a lot during that process. At least it seemed. And we had to just make it a constant thing. Like, hey, no knees unless you have knee pads. No, when we're boxing, you can't, do things that are illegal in boxing, like just playing by the rules. So he was also somebody that was, lived in my same house and was someone that I was trying to help mentor and stuff like that. So you don't really think of like, all right, time to kick this person out of, off the team and out of the neighborhood and everything else. And that's funny. Interesting enough, he's actually saying that I did kick him out, which is basically a bold-faced lie. So, that's the comedic part about the whole questioning.
It's definitely a situation the fans are very interested about. Now, you're right. As we let you go, we have to ask you, this fight with Cody and TJ, obviously it almost happened with Cody having his back hurt, but now it seems like he's back to 100%. So give us your prediction. How do you see this fight playing out now that Cody's 100% at UFC 217?
Well, I think it's going to be a war. Absolutely. I know TJ very well, and I mean he'll lay his life on the line for this thing, and so will Cody. And that's what you're getting at when you're dealing with the best fighters on the planet, and it's two of the best fighters on the planet. So it's going to come down to who's the better fighter. And in my mind, Cody is the better fighter from the get-go. You see championship mentality and championship spirit, which they both had from the get-go. I talked to them both about that, and I identified it early on. But then it comes down to who has the better skill set, who has the better athleticism, who has the better, game plan and matchup. And I think we've got the guy in Cody.
There you go, guys. Everyone's already excited. It is arguably one of the most anticipated fights of the year, and it's happening at UFC 217. In the meantime, follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Urijah Faber. And, of course, don't forget Snapchat. That's where some of the best stuff happens, at Urijah Faber 1. Mm-hmm. Uriah, thank you so much for coming on the program. We look forward to chatting to you soon. We appreciate your time. And just quickly, when's this movie coming out with The Rock so we can see you as a mercenary?
2018. Not sure when exactly.
All right. Well, we'll look out for it. In the meantime, thanks so much for your time, Uriah. I really appreciate it.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Jimmy Manuel. You listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is kind enough to join us so soon after fighting this past weekend at UFC 215, where she fought Amanda Nunes for the women's UFC bantamweight title. A fight that didn't go her way, but a fight that many people felt she won, including herself. She joins us on the program now to discuss that and more. She's the Bullet, Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina, thank you so much for joining us on the program. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Just taking easy days after the fight.
Yeah, I mean, it must be an emotional time for you. Tell us, what have the last 4 days been like for you since UFC 215?
First of all, thinking back to the fight, looking the fight again over and over, and just focusing on their next steps, next days, and also helping to my sister in preparation for her upcoming fight in September 22 in London. So now more focusing on keep going and continue training.
Yeah. Obviously, no rest for you, even though you just fought. I'm curious, how soon after the fight did you rewatch the fight? Did you watch it on the night, or did you sort of need a couple of days before you rewatched the fight?
No, of course I took a couple of days. It's not immediately, but all my team, they was watching the fight immediately, I think in the same night.
So tell us, when you rewatched the fight, what did you think? Did it change your mind at all? Did you still have the same opinion?
It's every same opinion. It's 3 rounds from 5. It was on my side, and I see the fight the same. And even if we speak about fifth round, by striking, I was clearly winning the fight. But of course, it was takedown, one her takedown over my one takedown, so it was 1-1. And if we speaking about the new rules that was applying in this fight, it's saying if you are just holding position without landing any damage or something hitting, it's not giving you some advantage. And if we are speaking about this last minute position when I was on the ground, even in this position I was landing more hits to her face. I was punching and landing elbows, and in the same time Amanda, she was not striking, doing nothing.
Well, I'm wondering, now that you've sort of had a chance to rewatch the fight, why do you think the judges gave it to her? And sort of, do you think it had anything to do with that last takedown in the 5th round? Even though, like you mentioned, she was on top, she didn't really do a whole lot. But do you think that's what swayed the judges? And do you think if you take that takedown away, you're the champion right now?
I think this pretty most it was this last takedown, but even with this last takedown, it was not it was only 1 point from all fight to give her victory. And but from my side, I respect the opinion of judges. I'm not discussing about this, but I know clearly, and all people who watch the fight and everyone who want to go back and see the fight, they will see clearly that 3 rounds from 5 rounds, it was on my side.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of that? Because a lot of media and the fans and commentators sounded like they believed you won. Does it kind of make the situation a little bit harder for you that so many people believe that you should be the champion right now?
because like everybody was watching the fight, and they saw that it was exactly that it happened. It was 3-2. It was my side, of course, but decision is already made. It's already like we have the result, and it's difficult to do with this something. It's just like focusing on the future, keep going training harder as I trained before, and in new fight, like give everything and did the great job that and like take this victory again in the future.
Mm-hmm. We were reading your Facebook statement, and one of the interesting parts was you said, I have not a single bruise on my face, but all my fists and fingers are broken from delivering punches. Is that true? Are your hands broken or your fingers are broken?
It's exactly true, because my face, I don't have not one bruise, and exactly like my fingers. In the first round, I had my finger dislocated, and in the break from the rounds, my coach Pavel Fedotov, he put it back, and I was able to fight again. But yes, my fingers and feet are swollen, and now it's like the one part of my body that is exactly like bothering me, and I have to to cure it.
Do you know? Sorry to jump in there, Dennis. Do you know if the bone is actually broken and it's an official injury, or cause I know a lot of fighters, they have sort of swollen hands after the fight, but is it an official break?
No, it's not breaking. If it would be breaking, it will be worse, because it would be meaning like to come back to the fight or to the training much later. But for now, it's like swollen, and it was dislocated, and I'm happy that it's not broken.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, how much did that have an effect on the fight for you, dislocating your finger at the start of the fight? How much did it affect you?
In the first round, it's completely affect me, because I could not fight with both hands, and my strong hand, left hand, was affected, so I could not make a fist, and that's why I just was able to fight with one arm, with one fist, and legs. And in the first round, yes, it was affection like a lot, but after the break, when my coach put it back, the finger, I was able to fight with both hands, and my fist was normal, so I just keep going with the same that I was started.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about the way she sort of fought in that fight. Did you, because she was obviously a lot less aggressive than we're used to. Is that what you expected and prepared for during camp, or were you a bit surprised by how, I guess, conservative she was?
I know exactly, because she and her training camp, they was watching the fight, and they knew exactly that if she will be just like going forward every time, I will like attack her, counterattack her, and it will be like not good for her. That's why I think it was the reason why she was like more thinking about when and how to start. But even in this moment, she was not like too aggressive. In this moment, I had to fight like both attacking and counter-attacking. But of course, I had to be very careful, because of like reach of hands, like weight, and like tall. It's everything. I have to manage the distance on my fight, and every time I had to think how to go out to the distance and out from the distance to hit her, to land her my punch, in not receiving back from her side.
Mm-mm. And Valentina, after the fight, she said that her goal and strategy in this fight was to show people that she could go 5 rounds, not to get a knockout or get a submission. What do you think about that mindset and her sort of intentionally not really going for the finish?
No, I don't think so, because she knew that if she would be like going crazy from the first round, she would not have like the same, because she knew it's a very dangerous for her go like without thinking, without like just going and attack and try to finish. It would be very dangerous for her, and she knew it. That's why I think the most reason it was like the same. Don't receive like a lot damage. But even in this moment, she was receiving like from my side, because the distance what I was working, like the striking and strategy, it was exactly like working on technique, tactic, and the speed.
Talk to us a little bit about your relationship with her. We know you guys have been rivals for a while now, and there was that moment at the end of the fight where she seemed a bit angry at you, and it seemed, but then there was a moment after that where it kind of seemed like you guys were amicable. Did you guys speak at all backstage after the fight, and how do you feel about her now?
No, we didn't speak. She, of course, after the fight, she came to my corner, to my team, to shake hands, and all kind like stuff of this. Mm-hmm. But I didn't speak with her, and definitely we are not friends.
Well, it's interesting because obviously afterwards she spoke about how, going into this fight, she wanted to sort of shut you up. That was the goal. She didn't want to hear from you anymore. Do you feel like the way the fight played out, it's kind of had the opposite effect, that now there's a lot of unfinished business between you guys? There's not really much of a resolution.
I think this is only one resolution from this situation that we have. This like fight, of course, the like result, it was not the same that I wanted, and but I know exactly that I won this fight and she didn't win this fight, and I think not right now, but in the future we will meet again and we will do it again, and like next time it will be, of course, it will be totally like it won't be the same, and she knows that in the next time she don't have a chances.
Because I'm going to ask you, do you think that out of all the girls in the division, she realizes that you're the toughest challenge for her when it comes to a matchup?
Really, I don't care about this, and I don't know. I don't want to go in her like head and think what she's thinking or what like her opinion, because I don't care about this. I go my way. I do my martial arts, like I do what I love to do. I love to fight. I love to train. And this is for me more important. Continue do what is my life. My life is martial arts, and I will every time when I go back to the training, I will making me better and better. And this is everything that I want.
What would you say were sort of the biggest lessons that you learned from this fight? I guess it's kind of hard when you sort of, you have that belief that you won the fight, but was there anything sort of you learned about yourself, anything that you can look to improve on? And what do you think would be different when you fight Amanda, and again in the next fight?
If we are speaking about this fight, it's not only I believe this. It's not only about me, because many times we can see that fighter believes that she or he won the fight, but reality say like different. But this is totally not the same situation. This is totally different, because not only I believe, everybody see, and you can see the fight. You can go back and see the video of the fight, and you will see the same what I saying to you, that it's exactly was like 3 rounds against 2 rounds on my side. Mm-hmm. But if we are saying about what's next and about like what is like I took from this fight, it's continue do what I am doing, and to put every time in every fight all my art that I'm practicing. And I hope that like in the next time, and this is like what people saying about center of the ring or something like this, it will not affect, and they will see not only the person who is holding the center without punching, without doing nothing, but also they will see like this exactly game plan, striking, counterattacking, attacking, and even if you are in the middle of the ring of the octagon, it doesn't matter that you are winning the fight. And the other fighter, if they are like clever and using all this distance, it's hitting much more and landing much more strikes, and it will be different in the next fight.
And for the record, I agree with you, Valentina. I think you did win this fight. Obviously, the judges, didn't see it that way. Do you feel pressure to sort of change, what you do in the future, I guess, to sort of make it, to please the judges, or maybe make it more clear to them?
Of course, like if you can see my other fights, it's not the same fight. Like when I feel that this is like the time to put more pressure or something like this, I every time do it. But sometimes when two fighters of the top level, it's very difficult to do like whatever you want, because you have to think. If you are just go crazy and without thinking how it will affect after 2 seconds of the fight, just going crazy onto your opponent without managing distance and nothing more, you just can be knocked out, because just to show for someone that you are aggressive or active, it doesn't matter that you will win and you will like go from this situation like a winner. So it's everything. It's all about opponents. With every opponent, you have to find the way to win the fight, and how it's like how you can apply your tactic in the best way.
And in the aftermath, you decided not to appeal with the commission, even though your team seemed like they wanted to. Why did you ultimately decide not to appeal, Valentina?
For me, I see this like appellation, and it can be like two sides from this side. One, it's more probably that it doesn't change nothing, because like it's already passed. It's already it's already done. And the second one, if like the commission agree, and they will like say yes, it was right, and we will give you victory. Like even if this is this situation, I don't want to be the champion like this. I want to win my belt in fair battle, and to receive the belt from the fight, not only from legal situation or fighting like appellation or something like this. And I know it will come. I will have my time, and I will do everything great next time. So I prefer to be the champion in the fight, not on the paper.
And are you definitely staying at 135, Valentina, or would you consider moving down to 125 for your next fight if the UFC offered you that, and if that was sort of a closer way to the title?
Now I seeking to move to 125, and I think more probably my next fight, it will be in this division, 125.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and that's an... Sorry, go on.
Because 125 is much closer weight for me. It's my real weight category, and even like 135, I feel me comfortable, and I feel like in 125 I will able to use all my technique and all my skills, because I will fight with the same size opponents as me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I guess that's the thing that a lot of people are talking about, because a lot of your opponents, I mean, for example, Holly Holm, she's looking to possibly move up and fight Chris Cyborg. Amanda Nunes, she's very long and she's got those broad shoulders. What do you think Valentina Shevchenko would look like at 125? I mean, you've looked amazing where you are now, but what do you think the biggest advantage will be?
125, it's my weight. It's like my natural weight, just a little bit cutting, and it will be everything perfect. Because in my Muay Thai fights, I every time was fighting in 125. In just like last years, I was moving a little bit upper weight class. It was 130. So I feel me very comfortable in 125, and even in 125, we can have like opponents very tall, but of course it will be the same like physical conditions, the same like height, the same size of arms and everything, the same like mine.
Just curious, Valentina, what's your walking around weight? When you're sort of walking around, training and sort of eating what you want, what is the natural weight for you?
I'm not cutting weight for 135, and for example, when I'm not training and when I don't do nothing, my weight it's around 138.
Oh wow!
137.
Okay. Wow. And this decision to go down to flyweight, is it anything to do with the way this fight played out? Was it always your plan to go down to 125, or is it sort of after this fight you're sort of looking at 125 being the better option?
When was created this weight class, flyweight 125, it was like, okay, it's now weight class, like my real weight division, but I never thought like an option for 125 because it was not this weight division, female weight division in UFC. And I knew that 115 I won't be there, and 135 I feel me comfortable and I can fight there. That's why I was not thinking about like flyweight division because it was not. But when it was created, then I receiving a lot of questions. Are you considering to moving down to the weight class? But in that moment, I was thinking more about my title fight that was already scheduled. But now I have time to think for 125.
Yeah. How close do you think you would be to a title at 125, a title shot? Because, the division doesn't have a champion. Paige Van Zandt is obviously fighting at 125 against Jessica Eye. You have Beck Rawlings and Joanne Calderwood. But other than that, how far away do you think you'd be from a title shot there?
Very not far.
Yeah.
Not far at all.
And the interesting thing here is, and we've heard people talk about it before, and Conor McGregor has done it himself. He's become a dual weight champion. If you do go down to 125 and you do become champion there, do you have a goal of going back up and possibly fighting Amanda again and maybe becoming a dual champion yourself?
Of course I do, because it's still on my plan to go back and fight again against Amanda again. And from the next time, not given any chance to make these decisions that it was making a few days ago. And of course it's on my mind, and I still want it, not right now, not in the near future, but definitely it will happen.
I don't want to look too far ahead, Valentina, but do you think we might see you versus Joanna Jedrzejczyk potentially for, what is it, I think a fourth time, except this time it'll be at 125, because you guys have fought in Muay Thai, and she's talked about coming up to 125. Do you think we might finally see you and her fight in the UFC?
Every time when people asking me about Joanna, I'm saying that, why not? Because we have our history, our area in fighting Muay Thai, and now we can start to do the same in MMA fight in UFC.
Well, it's exciting times. And look, before we let you go, we really appreciate the time. I mean, you mentioned that your hands and your feet are swollen, but do you have any idea how soon it would be for you to be ready and possibly fight again and make that 125 debut in the UFC?
Right now, I don't thinking about the date. Right now, I taking vacation. I want to recuperate my body, my health, and everything. And, of course, to support my sister on her fight September 22. And after maybe some weeks, we will plan with my team about next date for the fight. And we will, go back and coming back to the planning of everything and thinking about the date.
All right. Well, we're very excited. Just quickly, Valentina, where are you going for the vacation? Are you traveling anywhere, or are you staying at home? Any exciting travels?
I think we will travel somewhere around the United States. Not sure what city yet, but definitely I will go to travel, because with all preparation, with all training camps, I was very, very missing all travels that we every time was making during our life.
All right, well, there you go, guys. She's Valentina Shevchenko. Don't forget to follow her and her holiday adventures at Bullet Valentina on Twitter and Instagram. Valentina, if you want to come down to Australia, we're happy to have you here in Melbourne. There's a lot of great beaches and things like that. And, of course, check out her sister, Antonia Shevchenko, fighting on September 22nd. Very excited to see what happens next. He's sounding very good, very positive, which is great to hear. And we're curious to see what fights are lined up next for you. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, Valentina.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Hey guys, this is Brian Stan. You're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Joining us here on the program is a man that needs very little introduction. Actually, I've said that about a few guests now, so you're probably confused as to who's on the program. Let me introduce him. He is, of course, a co-host of Severe MMA. You've seen his amazing work on Sherdog.com. He is the man who doesn't sleep at night, so he can report on the world of MMA. I don't think you've slept for a while, my friend, but it's great to have you on the program. Nevertheless, Sheehan, welcome to Submission Radio. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me on, lads. What do you need to sleep for when there's stuff happening in MMA 24 hours a day? Sleep is, you're only missing out.
What's going on though? Because me and Casper, we sleep. Casper sleeps different patterns to me, but I usually sleep like a general human being. Now I'll try when I try and chat to you on Twitter. I'll message you earlier in the morning, like around 8 in the morning our time, because I know it's getting late over there in Ireland. So I'm hitting you up about 11 p.m. or so, which would be late for me. I'm already in bed, tuck it in. I got my PJs on usually around that time, my nightcap. But then I start messaging you later on in the day, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock Australian time, which is technically right in the middle of the night, and bang, responses right away. Do you have like a little bell or something that rings every time someone sends you a direct message on Twitter? Or so? Do you sleep?
No.
When do you sleep? You like Batman in Batman 1989, where he hangs upside down like a bat.
That's exactly.
Shelf flapper sleeping in the bed. What is going on?
That's exactly what I am. I'm nocturnal at this stage now. But like the UFC is on a Saturday night, so I'm up late watching that. There's probably a builder on a Friday night. I'm streaming that on a Friday night, and then I work evenings as well during the week. So what's the point? Like, I don't have to be up at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to go to work anyway, because I work in the evening. So I just stay up late. Screw it. Might as well. There's nothing happening anyway in the world of MMA, so I'll just stay up late and leave on American time. That's the way to do it, I think.
I love it. I'm with you on that one. I'm like on the Dracula sleep diet as well, just up all night, sleeping during the day, and you always kind of push it like, I'll sleep later, and then you never really catch up, and then you wake up at 40 years old and wonder what you've been doing with your life. But you mentioned, Dennis, a lot of things, and of course you as well, Sean, mentioned a lot of things happening in the world of MMA. We'll talk about UFC 215 in just a second, but obviously one of the things I want to bring up is UFC 217, which is not too far away, around the corner. It's sort of shaping up as a super card, much like UFC 205 at the end of last year, and I'm just, listen, I like fights as much as the other guys, but you got Michael Bisping versus GSP, you got one title fight. You got Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw, another title fight. And just recently, yesterday, got announced Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Rose Namajunas, a third title fight. And I kind of feel like, have we learned nothing from the end of 2016, where we had UFC 205, and then we had a vast array of nothing for like the first half of 2017? I don't, listen, as a pay-per-view buyer, as someone who pays full price, I love that we get all these fights, and obviously any fight fan would as well. But I am also concerned, what's going to happen at UFC 218? Is there any title fights that they're going to be able to put on there, just a short while later? What's happening at UFC 219? It doesn't look like Conor McGregor's going to be fighting at the end of the year. I feel like they need to ration out these title fights for at least the end of the year, if not the start of, 2018. What do you guys think?
Look, I think they've done a pretty good job in the last year or two of actually doing that. I think, look, some people will criticize the cards. I thought 215, we'll get to that I know later on, but I thought that was a pretty good card. It doesn't have the name value, but I think as long as you put on good fights like that, you're obviously not going to get the casuals coming in buying it in high order, but people like us, most people listening to this podcast probably hardcore MMA fans, that they'll enjoy those cards as well. And I like the fact that we have a card like 217 with 3 title fights, with GSP especially is a name guy that people are going to tune in for, the casual fans. You need those cards, and the problem is you only have GSP, McGregor, Jones, Rousey if she comes back, and 3 of those that I mentioned there mightn't even be back. So you have to stack the cards when you have someone to put on top of it that is gonna that's gonna bring in the casual fans. Because I'm sure Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas are delighted that they're on the GSP undercard, because people are gonna come in for that. And we need these big events because it's grand having all small events, and if you had half of these fights on another card, it'd be grand. But we need these huge big fight nights. They stimulate MMA. They bring in the fans, they create a buzz about MMA. We see that even with McGregor and Mayweather and stuff. People are still talking about that, even nearly a month later now, and people are still kind of living off it. So I'm okay with this. I like this because I think there's enough talent to make a lot of good cards in the year. There isn't enough talent to make a lot of great cards in the year. So I'm grand if they make 3, 4, 5 great cards in the year and stack as much as they can.
There's someone who has to put together a weekly lineup of guests with Casper for Submission Radio every week. I'm like, what are these guys doing? Keep an ace in the hole for later on in December. But look, I guess they got a plan. Maybe if they threw them on there, they got some kind of sneaky plan. Obviously, Brock Larson or Brock Lesnar, as the casual fans call him. But I don't know who they throw on that December card. I mean, if you guys are throwing 3 title fights on this November card and you've got this December 30th card, which people are expecting stuff from. It's like when Sean Sheehan comes on a submission radio. People expect results, Sean. Damn it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting because I can understand what you mean, Casper. I mean, what are these crazy cats going to do for December 30th? Because we saw Cain Velasquez. You did this quick interview with Ariel Helwani where he said basically he's not going to be coming back this year. But what do you do for that huge December 30th card? Just as we stand right now, maybe Tony Ferguson versus Khabib could be like a co-main. But from your perspective, Sean, are there any sort of big-name fights that could be put together at the moment that we're sort of overlooking that could possibly hold this December 30th card together as still a big spectacle?
It's tough if you want a big spectacle. I think a fight like Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic could headline that card and be huge. I think that's the fight to make now in the heavyweight division with Cain out as well. Stipe is, he's had problems with his contract and stuff. He obviously wants more money and he definitely should. So he might be waiting for Cain because that's definitely probably more of a money fight. But look, Tyron Woodley is still out there. Rafael dos Anjos won at the weekend. You can call that, a champion, next champion versus a current champion. I think that's a good fight as well that could possibly get turned around and put on it. But your point is definitely correct. I don't think there's anything huge they can put on it. Like McGregor's not going to be back in that time. GSP, I don't think he's going to turn around that quickly. Obviously, it'd only be 5-6 weeks. Ronda's not going to be back, and Amanda Nunes as well at the weekend. She needs to get surgery now on her sinus problem. So she's not going to turn around. I think Stipe is the answer, and I definitely think Francis Ngannou as well. But as I say, it's going to be in the 250 to 500,000 pay-per-view by mark. I don't think it's going to be a big hit pay-per-view.
I'm with you there. Like that's the thing with Tyron Woodley. Like we don't know. He might be out, potentially suspended. It's a torn labrum. It's something that's very serious. He may not even fight for the rest of the year. And then you've got, you could do Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar. That's a good fight. So if end of year card, if we don't get say McGregor, in the Diaz trilogy, or say Ferg or Kevin Lee, and we have say Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar, and Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou, I'm pretty happy with that. But then what are you giving me for UFC 218, which is, December 2nd? Are you guys going to be doing, say, Khabib versus Tony Ferguson, or Khabib versus Kevin Lee? And that's it. That's the main event of the pay-per-view. So I'm also sort of concerned, as a paying customer, what are they going to be giving me for UFC 218?
And Sean, just quickly, while we're on this, and I know you were about to lay down some major knowledge on us anyway, but just quickly, Conor McGregor, to me and Casper, as we look at it, as what we hear from John Kavanagh, the vibe that we're getting right now, it doesn't seem like Conor McGregor will be making it in time for this December 30th card. How likely do you think it is that the UFC are able to finagle some kind of deal to get him onto that one?
I'd say very, very unlikely, although you never know with Conor McGregor. I've said this to you before, and it's an insane thing, but if GSP wins that middleweight title, Conor McGregor is going to fight GSP at middleweight. I just feel it. It's going to happen, because then if he beats GSP, he can go for a fourth belt against Tyron Woodley, and that would just be insane. Now, listen to myself saying that, I sound like an idiot, but it's Conor McGregor, and he could, he is insane. He can do anything he wants. So if that happened, if GSP wins, and if GSP comes out pretty, if it was an early stoppage or something, he can turn around quickly, I could see that happening possibly. But look, there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, and maybes. If I was to call it, I don't think McGregor will be back that quickly. I think it'll be probably February or March before he's back. It depends. Like the world is his oyster now. He can do whatever he wants, really. But yeah, look, all he's gonna be looking for now is big fights. Nate Diaz for the lightweight belt is the most likely one for me. As I said, GSP as well. Tyron Woodley could be one as well. I think a lot of people might think Tyron Woodley is the best option for him, but I think McGregor is an insane man. I think he thinks he can win that fight, and I think he wants that fight as well to go for the 3 belts. So that's definitely another option. But I wouldn't put anything past him. But he seems to be enjoying himself at the moment outside in Ibiza on his yacht and things like that. So I don't think he's in any rush to come back.
Well, let's quickly touch on UFC 215, because we're talking about the welterweight division anyway in Woodley. And I want to touch on this RDA fight, guys, because RDA looked amazing against Neil Magny. He went out there, he did his thing. People were very, very impressed. But Casper, when it comes to RDA, do you think he's in a good spot to possibly fight for the title next? Do you think he can somehow figure out a way or end up in a position where he gets that title shot a lot sooner than people think?
Yeah, he is in a great spot, and it's something that we touched on last episode where I think people were kind of sleeping a little bit on RDA, and we sort of said that, hey, if he wins, he might be in this position. I just think with timing, a lot of it depends on, what really happens with this GSP fight. I mean, GSP is saying that if he wins, he has to defend the belt. It's in his contract, but I feel like that's really only exercisable if the UFC want to put their foot down, and I think if they decide, whatever, you can go, say, fight Conor McGregor, or you can go down to welterweight, then they're not really going to, enforce that. And then if GSP does lose, maybe he fights Tyron Woodley and, RDA sort of on the sidelines. I think realistically, RDA is probably going to have to fight one more fight. You've got, but he's in a sweet position. You got Stephen Thompson at number 1. He's facing Jorge Masvidal. If Thompson wins, well, he's probably not getting that rematch. If Jorge Masvidal wins, maybe he goes next. Robbie Lawler sort of had an uninspiring performance against Cerrone. He probably needs another win. Number 3, Damian Maia, he just lost. He's not getting that shot anytime soon. He's facing Colby Covington. If Covington wins, he's probably at least one fight away, and he's been dying to fight RDA as well. So I could very well see, Covington and RDA facing, depending on that plays out. And number 5 is Carlos Condit, and he's obviously, we don't really know what's going on there. There's also Cowboy Cerrone, and I know that RDA's beaten him already, but I could see the UFC obviously putting Cowboy Cerrone in there because, he in this time where all these main events and big fights are falling out, you pretty much know, it's pretty much guaranteed the Cowboy Cerrone isn't pulling out. So I think there's a few guys on the fast track, but RDA is definitely up there. Realistically, I think he has one more fight, and then he might even potentially fight Tyron Woodley. But there's really no other clear contenders, and I think anybody else is really going to have one more fight before before they fight Woodley, who we have no idea when he's going to return. He might be good by the end of the year, or he might not be cleared until January 25th, as his suspension stands currently.
And I like this RDA Robbie Lawler fight, possibly to figure out who the next title contender is as well. So there's some fire in the kitchen there, Sean, but let's just play a little bit of fun. I know I love to hear your analysis on things and get your thoughts on things. How would you see an RDA, the RDA that we saw at UFC 215, how would you see him go against the champion Tyron Woodley?
I think it'd be a very interesting fight. Someone actually asked me about it the other day, and I was thinking about it. A lot of Tyron Woodley's fights lately have been him and either Stephen Thompson or Damian Maia kind of just standing there looking at each other for 5 rounds, and we've had 15 rounds of that now, basically, with maybe 1 or 2 rounds of exceptions in that. I don't think that would happen with RDA. RDA, he is a guy that won't stand there and look at you. He will go forward. He'll kick your legs. He'll come in with that left hook. He'll use his speed. He's strong now for the weight. He's good takedown defense, good jiu-jitsu, good top game, good takedowns of his own as well. Now, against Tyron Woodley, obviously, I don't think he's going to be able to take him down. He's not going to be able to use his jiu-jitsu ability against him. We saw RDA against Eddie Alvarez. He obviously got hit hard and he got hurt with a shot, kind of a right hand over the top, something similar to what Tyron Woodley hits. So you could see him hitting him with something like that. But he's now not depleting his body, not cutting down to 155 pounds, so up at 170. I think it's interesting. I think RDA is obviously a little bit smaller. Tyron Woodley's very fast, but I think Tyron Woodley is all about power, whereas RDA has kind of the power and the speed as well. And he's very tactically aware, RDA. The thing is, with this one, it's tough to know what Woodley's actually going to do. Like, if Woodley comes out very, very defensive, I think that could actually play into RDA's game a little bit, because he's good when he's breaking down defenses like that, when he's coming and attacking you. I think if Woodley goes forward and tries to beat him, I think he can hit RDA and knock him out. But it's very tough to know with Tyron Woodley, because, as I said, he's had a lot of kind of boring fights, 2 guys just looking at each other for so long. I think against Maia, he could have upped the pace and beaten him like that, beaten him by going forward, but he chose not to do it. So I think I think it's a dangerous fight for him because of that. And I think RDA would probably fancy his chances. Now, look, I think I'd end up picking Woodley. I think he's wrestling as well. I think he'd add it into that fight if it came to it. I think he'd come in with a good game plan. And if he was losing the first couple of rounds, I think he fights in a way now that he kind of saves his energy, that if he needs to look at the Wonderboy fights, that he can come on late and attack. And I think if he did that against RDA, he might be able to get the finish. So I'd be leaning Woodley on that. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good fight.
I'm with you there. I think it'd be a really good fight as well. And I think the other thing is, I remember when RDA was first going to welterweight, and there were pictures showing up of him just looking like a deflated balloon, and now you look at him and he's filled out. It looks actually really good in the division. Beat Neil Magny obviously very convincingly, and he's got a bit of TST action happening. He's thick, he's solid, he's tight. We got GQ RDA, so I'm really I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does in this division. We're talking obviously UFC 215. You can't move on without talking about the main event that wasn't. Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg. We're talking about pay-per-views, UFC 218, 217. But what about UFC 216? Sean, do you think that that's still the fight that the UFC should make? Should they just reschedule the Borg-Demetrius Johnson fight at UFC 216, if that's even a possibility? And do you think it sort of works out in a way? Because UFC 216 at the moment, you could argue that it's somewhat light. There are some fun fights, but there's only one title fight. It's an interim title. And if you put that Demetrius Johnson-Ray Borg fight, even though there's still no 100% guarantee of it happening, it kind of sweetens the deal. What do you think?
I think it should be on it, and I'll tell you for why. A lot of people are saying, does Borg deserve the title fight? Does he deserve to fight for it after falling out of this? Okay, if that's your argument, fine. But I think for Demetrius Johnson, it actually benefits him to fight Ray Borg. Like he spent the last 2 or 3 months or whatever it was preparing for Ray Borg. This is his matchup. If he only has 3 or 4 weeks to turn around and do it again, now I'm sure he could prepare for anyone, whoever he's coming in against. But I think it makes it easier for Demetrius Johnson. I think he'd probably rather to do that as well, especially when he's breaking the record. Look, the other side, the other aspect of it is, will Ray Borg actually make it? Is he depleting himself too much? Is the weight cut too much? And it's proven in the past that it has been. I think you have to do it for the fairness for Demetrius Johnson. Now, if he doesn't want Ray Borg, I think he should be allowed to do it as well. I think next contender should be allowed come in there, whether that's Sergio Pettis or Henry Cejudo again. I'd probably give it to Pettis, but no, I think I put in Ray Borg again, and I've been looking forward to that fight. Look, I definitely picked Johnson, but yeah, I think it should be. And as well, I have a preview written for it, so I can just copy and paste that again and post it. So that'd be handier for me.
Do it for Sean. Do it to make your life easier, right, Sean?
100%. Yeah, that's what happened with Nunes and Shevchenko again. So it was brilliant. And every time a card a big fight falls out like that the day before, it's brilliant for me. I can just post my preview again, the same thing.
I love it. And yeah, I'd love to see it on UFC 216 as well. So let's see if they can make it happen. You mentioned Nunes Shevchenko and the fact that you've been reusing your previews, Sean. Now we're kidding. They're great previews, by the way. And it is a fight that, it was exciting for us to watch from a technical perspective, but it was a super close fight, and you really had to get your monocle out to see all the little details through the fight to figure out who won this one. I suppose this is the question that a lot of listeners are sort of looking to get answered by us. So I'll go with you first, Sean. When it came to the matchup, what did you think, and who was the official winner on the Sean Sheehan scorecard?
On the Sean Sheehan scorecard, it was 48-47 to Amanda Nunes, but I had no problem 48-47 to Valentina Shevchenko as well. Look, I thought the first was... I thought the first, second, fourth, and fifth were pretty clear. Nunes won the first. Shevchenko definitely won the second. The first was close enough. The second, Shevchenko. The fourth, Shevchenko definitely won it. That was a clear round of all. The fifth, I thought Nunes won it pretty clearly as well. Although, I see people arguing with it, but I think people misunderstand the actual rules in that one. They say takedown, she didn't do anything from the takedown. There was force in the takedown. It was a hard takedown. When she got up, she landed a big knee, and she also took Shevchenko's back when Shevchenko tried to take her down. So that's effective grappling for me. Those are 3 big scoring patterns there that actually happened in a close round, which I think Nunes was actually slightly winning anyway. So I think she won that one. I thought it was fairly clear for me. Look, it was the third it came down to, and that's a 10-10 round, to be honest. It could have been a draw as well. I'd love to see more 10-10 rounds in MMA, but we're not going to do it. The judges are discouraged from actually counting them, but that was as close a round as you can. Look, when I'm watching fights live, I try to, watching from a technical standpoint as well, it's hard to score it straight away, and you kind of score it off how you're feeling it. But going back watching it again, I try to score it like someone lands a punch, okay, they're 1 ahead. Someone else lands a punch, 1-1. If someone lands a big punch, maybe they're 3 or 4 1 ahead, and it'd take it like that. And I did that with that round. I watched it a couple of times, and I barely had Nunes ahead at the end. It was literally 1 or 2 punches as well when it comes down close to that. And I think people forget this because it's kind of a taboo thing. octagon control. Octagon control matters when the round is close. Now, if the round is not close, octagon control doesn't matter. But when it's, as I said there, I think it could be in a 10-10 round. Nunes was controlling the octagon. She was the one pushing forward. She was the one pushing Shevchenko back. And I think that one of her now, there's definitely the argument Shevchenko was trying to counter as well, and she wanted to be there, and that's fair enough. But if you're playing that game, you know, it's unfortunate because as someone who loves the technique and loves countering as well, like Shevchenko does, that's just the way it is. You know, and if you're pushing forward, you're going to win the close rounds in like that because it's in the rules.
Yeah, I'm with you. So honestly, I think my brain melted trying to score that fight. Even when rewatching it, it's like you have those moments like, I can see this way, I can see it that way. For me, I had rounds 2, 3, and 4 for Shevchenko. And even that third one, honestly, it was so close. I think Shevchenko landed the better, cleaner punches. But again, I wouldn't even entertain an argument with someone. I think those leg kicks, especially when you're watching in a real time from a judge's position, you don't really know where they're sitting and how they're viewing those leg kicks. It definitely can sway you. And I think like with that fifth round, I definitely agree with you. Look, I think Nunes won, but even then, I wouldn't argue it too hard. I think that as far as the rules are, it goes grappling and damage are more important than, say, octagon control and pressure. And obviously with takedowns, Nunes didn't do anything with those takedowns, but that is still grappling. If you are taking Shevchenko down, you are forcing your will on her, you're grappling her, you're taking her down. Even though Shevchenko afterwards, you know, was hitting her from the bottom, and I think Nunes quite possibly literally didn't land even a single punch or do anything when she was on top. So honestly, I think that's the thing. With Nunes, a lot of her game sort of revolved around range and trying to keep Shevchenko at bay, and Shevchenko was sort of playing the counter striker, and you're going to run into these problems when you're fighting that style. It's not, I'm not saying they have to change, I'm not saying there's an issue with it, it's just that knowing that judging is so subjective, you're going to run into these issues. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate, and I think that Shevchenko has every right to feel that she was robbed, but in all reality, it was just a really, really close fight. I don't think it's controversial, and I don't think it's a robbery either way. It's just a really close fight.
And it's one of those things where I agree with... Sorry, go on, Big Sean.
I think it shows the inadequacies as well with the actual 10-point scoring system, because if you're looking at that as a 5-round fight, there's no rounds, you're looking at it as a 25-minute fight. We'll say Shevchenko definitely had the better minutes of it. If you look at the fourth round, she won that round clearly. The second round as well, she won that round clearly. You know, she did better in those rounds than Nunes did in the whole fight. But the other 3 rounds, I think Nunes just scraped them. So it's definitely tough. If people are saying if it's an overall fight, I think Shevchenko won it. But in the 10-point system, I think it's Nunes's, and that definitely shows that there's problems with the scoring.
And the other thing, just before you say your thoughts, Dennis, I'm just curious what you guys think on this whole notion of, you know, if you want to beat the champ, you have to do it convincingly.
Oh God,
I know. Like I think a while ago I was under that impression. I sort of bought into that hyperbole, but I think the fact is that every fight should be judged as if it's a clean slate, as if it's 0-0. It doesn't really matter who the champ is, because I think it's a little bit absurd that if it's a close fight, you say, well, one person is the champion, so we're going to give it to them, as if you're giving them a favor, an advantage, a distinct advantage, just because of their previous credentials. I don't think that should exist. What do you think of sort of the decision, Dennis, and obviously those thoughts as well?
Yeah, it's all bullshit. It should just be based fight by fight. And I think that was more, and that was a huge thing, wasn't it, guys, back in the day? Like, I know when GSP was champion, there was a lot of like, back in those days, a lot of title fights where you're like, maybe not that much happened. And all right, if you got to beat the champ, you got to really beat the champ. But now I think back to it, I'm like, man, that is so stupid. I can't believe like that got over as big as it did. It's like when you think back to like the old WWF or WCW days, and there's like a character that was terrible, and you somehow were like a fan of them. Yeah. You look back on it now, you're like, how the hell did anybody cheer or boo this guy? This guy is terrible. So it's one of those things and I think it was one of those things that Dana White kind of put out there as well.
Yeah.
Like, we were watching Dana. Well, Dana White said, you know, like, don't trust the judges. You got to really beat the champion. And we were all like, yeah, man, got to beat the champion.
Don't leave it in the hands of the judges is another stupid thing. There's just like, I don't think these guys are trying to leave it in the hands of the judges. Elite fighters fighting elite fighters. Yeah, you know, decisions happen.
At least you can understand that one. Like, finish the fight, you win it. You know, there's some logic to that anyway. But this one about you having to beat the champ, like, do people not realize they take up the scores after every round? So how can you, like, at the end of the fight, how can you say, no, I'm going to give it to Nunes because she's the champ? That just doesn't happen.
But I feel like back in the day, some of the judges actually bought into it as well. Do you guys feel like that? Like, I feel like some of the judges back in the day were like, yeah, well, he's the champ. They really had to put on a thing for the champ. Because I remember there was a few fights there. I was like, I don't know. But I guess he's the champ. So he didn't do enough to really convince the judges because of the champ. But with Amanda Nunes, I had Amanda Nunes winning it. But again, I'm just like you guys. I think it was super close. I tried watching it a bunch of times. Like my dog barked in the back. I looked away for a second and missed like the microsecond that the round might have been won by the other person. Then I hated myself for it, but I couldn't go back because my stupid internet was slow. So I had to restart it all over again. It was a brutal experience, but yeah, it was a super close fight. What do you guys think of Shevchenko's future, though, quickly, as we finish up on UFC 215? Because, Sean, I want to get some previews from you, my man. What do you think about her future? Do you guys believe that dropping down is the next logical step for her? Do you want to stick around do you want to see her stick around in the division, Casper?
Yeah, no, honestly, and she said this to us before, that she's probably going to be dropping down to 125 for her next fight, and honestly, I think it's the smartest move for her. I think that given the way this fight went, the fact that Amanda has won both fights, no matter how controversial either one of them was, not really the first one, but this one, I don't think the UFC had any rush to give her another title shot, not against Amanda Nunes at least, so why not go down to flyweight? It's a fresh division. It's a young division. She can probably, she might even get an immediate title shot. There's not really any clear contenders at the moment. I mean, Paige Van Zandt versus Jessica Eye. If Paige Van Zandt wins, you got to think they're going to be throwing her in there. But what if, say, Paige wins and then Beck Rawlings wins? Are they going to be doing that rematch for the flyweight title? Maybe not. In comes Valentina. Maybe Valentina versus Paige Van Zandt or Valentina versus Jessica Eye. You never know. She could be either fighting for the belt in her next fight or potentially the fight afterwards. So I think that's smart. And it's not even a case where she can't compete in 135. I mean, she beat Holly Holm, who is a big 135-pounder. Size, I don't think it's really an issue for Valentina. I think she can still beat most, if not all, of the division. And this is a fight that she arguably won. I think she did win. So I don't think it's a case of she's leaving 135 because she's not good enough for the division. I think it's just a case where it makes more sense, career-wise, her being a champion. And then that's the other thing. If she's a champion at 125, she has a much better case to move back up and challenge for the bantamweight title, potentially be a dual weight champion. Again, we're going down the road, but I think it's smart. What do you think, Sean? What do you think about her and whether she should go down to 125 or not?
It's a funny one because I think Shevchenko is probably the worst matchup for Nunes in that division. And she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place now. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch, to be honest. I enjoyed the fight. I know a lot of people didn't. There isn't that really that many challengers there. Look, Nunes as well has to have surgery now, so she's going to be out for a while. So
do you
I know Raquel
an immediate
Pennington
one or sort of down the line, Sean, in terms of rematch?
I wouldn't mind seeing an immediate one, to be honest, but that's probably just me. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But yeah, look, I think there isn't really that many challengers there. Pennington is there. Obviously, she's a good win over Misha Tate, but that was almost a year ago now, and it's going to be close to 15, 16 months probably by the time Nunes is back. Between her last fight, she might be forced to take another fight. We've seen how that's worked out for people before. She could end up losing that and there'll be no one there then, and Shevchenko might be the option. Even with the cards we were talking about earlier later on in the year, something could happen. What if Bisping gets injured? GSP might be forced off that card and to fight someone else, or GSP gets injured, Bisping might be forced to fight someone else. These things can always happen. Look, it's very, very tough with that division. As you said, Holly Holm is probably going to go up and possibly fight Cyborg. Julian Pena coming off last round. Rossi's not going to be back anytime soon. Sarah McMahon just lost. I have a possible one here, and it might be a bit outside the box, but what about Jermaine Durandamy? Could she be next for Nunes? I think that's possible. She was the 145-pound champion, in fairness. I know she just pulled out of a fight, but she's a good fighter. I'd love to see that fight. I think that's a very, very interesting fight, and that's one I wouldn't mind seeing if they could put it together. And
I've got a matchup for you guys as well. What about GSP versus Amanda Nunes? He's fighting Michael Bisping. Why can't he drop down and get the title there? Nah, you know what, Jermaine... If there's not many options, I think Jermaine could kind of sell it, and they could put the promotion machine behind it. But I think a lot of fans are still a bit unhappy about Jermaine, and I don't know. I get this feeling from fans as well. I think they're unhappy about Nunes because she beat Ronda Rousey so decisively, and there were so many Ronda Rousey fans out there that got their heart broken by it. So they're like anti Amanda Nunes. So, and also the whole weight cutting thing. So I feel it'd be like who do they hate more going into the fight? Like, who's the two heels versing each other? So.
Yeah, Dana White would be like Ivan Drago. He'd just sit there like, if she dies, she dies for both of them. He probably wouldn't even attend that event either.
That would be a tough like post-fight press conference if that fight doesn't go well either. That'd be like, I don't know, he'd like Tyron Woodley both of them right afterwards. Yeah. Pull their opportunity to fight Conor McGregor, GSP or something. But anyway, Sean, let's quickly preview some of the upcoming fights because this weekend, the fans are pretty lucky. There's some fun fights coming up, and we want to talk to you about a couple of specific fights coming up. The first fight we want to get your gauge on is the Thiago Alves versus Mike Perry fight. Now, Mike Perry, he's really becoming a guy that people are taking notice of in the division. He's exciting. He says crazy things in interviews, and his fight style's pretty cool. So break down this fight for us. Do you see Mike Perry getting the nod here and sort of adding a bit more rub to his growing star, or do you think Thiago Alves shows that, the veteran's still in town and this is still his octagon?
I think Mike Perry will win, but I wouldn't be at all shocked if Thiago Alves won. I think Mike Perry, he's a bit of a berserker. He's a bit of a madman himself, and he fights that way as well. Big knockout power, puts it all on the line very, very early, and if he doesn't get the finish, it gets tougher for him as the rounds go on. I think Alves is a guy, he's been caught one or two times before now. He hasn't been knocked out that many times in his career. I think he's only maybe 2 knockout losses or something like that in his whole career. But he's a guy as well that will go in and he'll put it on the line early. I think for Mike Perry to worry about, I think, is if Alves fights more safe and if he attacks the legs and the body with kicks and takes it maybe to get to the third round. I think that could be something very interesting for Mike Perry to deal with. But Alves as well, he hasn't fought that much recently. He had one fight in last year, 2016, but he was out injured for what I think it was like 14, 15 months since that, and he's had one fight this year as well, against Jim Miller and Patrick Cote. So I think Mike Perry is he's had a lot of fights recently, been in the wars, and I think if he can lay his hands early on Thiago Alves, I think he can knock him out. Now, a big thing as well with Mike Perry is his takedown defense sometimes, can be lacking a bit. Alves is not, I don't think Alves will go in there to take him down. Now, with a good game plan, I think Alves can win this fight. If he mixes it up with a couple of takedowns, if he plays the long game, if he plays it safe, I think he definitely can win it. But Mike Perry has a knack for drawing lads into wars as well. And I think if he does draw Alves into war, he will be able to finish him because he has very, very big power. And, he has shown that in a lot of fights. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be an insane first round.
Yeah, I love it. Someone's getting beheaded. I'd be shocked if that fight sees the judge's decision. The judges can basically take the night off for that one. Now, we're running pretty low on time, Sean, so we'll get your thoughts on this one. Luke Rockhold versus David Branch. A lot of people are calling Luke Rockhold a nightmare stylistic matchup for David Branch. What do you think? Do you think Luke Rockhold goes in there, gets it done in spectacular fashion, or do you think there's a chance David Branch boops him on the chin, tests that chin, and maybe upsets the division?
I think he could. I'm picking Rockhold, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it. My picks will be out tomorrow, so I'm looking at it officially there. But I don't know. I was watching Luke Rockhold fights last night, and watch his fight versus Vitor Belfort. Obviously, Michael Bisping as well. He got knocked out in both of those. But watch his fight against Leona Machida. He got caught hard in the first round against that. Could have been knocked out. David Branch kind of throws like that. He throws very, very hard early. They're similar fighters in a way. Obviously, Rockhold's a southpaw and Branch is orthodox, but they conserve, and then they throw hard. I have a feeling if Branch can throw at throw at a similar time to Rockhold and catch him, he could knock him out because Branch hits very hard. He mightn't have the record for showing it, and obviously his last fight back in the UFC was a decision, and he's had a lot of submissions and stuff recently, and I don't think he'd be submitting Rockhold. But if he can catch him on the chin, I have a feeling he can knock him out. Now look, Rockhold, he's taken enough time off after that Bisping fight, and obviously that was a heavy knockout. Ring rust could play into it, but I think for him, a guy who has taken that kind of damage, I think it's good for him to take a break like that. If he worked on his defense a little bit, I think he should have enough to get through. I think he can take Branch down as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Rockhold did submit him, but I'm really, really looking forward to this one as well. There's a lot of intriguing matchups lately, and I don't think this maybe has the biggest name of any of the fights, but I think it's a very intriguing matchup.
And just, we were talking about possible big matchups the UFC could make. Do you see there being a chance that if Rockhold does win this fight, they possibly do a matchup between him and Whittaker in the meantime, while Bisping or GSP recover from their fight in November for that interim title?
Maybe. I think if I think it's weird. I think
just say no, Sean. Break my heart.
I don't think it will happen.
Break my heart, damn it.
I think it'll. I think it depends maybe on Conor McGregor a bit and GSP. If GSP wins, I think that fight between McGregor and GSP will happen. And if that does happen, you could see Whittaker against Rockhold. That's a phenomenal fight. I'd love to see that fight, but I think your guys are probably going to get Bisping against Whittaker early next year in Australia, probably.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the cherry on top, right? Not only that fight, but to have it here in Australia, that'd be awesome. And, it's obviously legalized now in Perth, so maybe the UFC want to do a big splash. They generally do when they go into new territories, make a big impact. So if they do that card early next year in Perth, wouldn't surprise me at all. And that's the thing, like if Robert Whittaker, he's healing his knee, and then he's ready to go early next year, let's say January, February, we're already 2-3 months removed from Bisping GSP. That's a little bit of time for either guy to recover. And then if you're going to wait, say, why would you do Rockhold Whittaker, say, in January, February, and then maybe you have to wait another 6 months to unify the belt? So I'm with you, Sean. I think that if anything, we won't be seeing a Rockhold Whittaker fight anytime soon. But we are running low-ish on time. So before we let you go, obviously fight fans will be somewhat divided this weekend. Not only do we have Rockhold and Branch, we also have Triple G versus Canello. Talk to us about that one. How do you see it playing out? And do you have any sexy predictions for us?
I think Canelo Alvarez will win by KO in the middle to late rounds. I'm a big fan of Triple G. I obviously don't cover boxing that much, but these guys have watched all their fights recently. I'm a big fan of them. I think Golovkin against Daniel Jacobs, I actually think he lost that fight. It was a very close fight. I don't think he looked as good as he has in previous fights. That fight against Kell Brook as well, I thought Kell Brook did really, really well until Golovkin, he's just way, way bigger than Kell Brook. But I think Canelo Alvarez is like a bigger, better version of Kell Brook, and if he can fight kind of the similar way to Kell Brook fought, I think he can beat Golovkin. I think Golovkin is a guy who, he's kind of a front runner. He likes to be going forward. He likes to be leading the fight. He likes to be landing his shots. Whereas Canelo Alvarez likes guys that do that. He has probably, maybe aside from Floyd Mayweather, the best defense in boxing. His head movement is phenomenal. His counters are just brilliant, and he hits with power. We saw that knockout against Amir Khan. A couple, he knocked out Liam Smith as well, and a few more guys. But I think, I think it'll be late, and I think Alvarez will just put on too much pressure. I think Golovkin takes too many shots, and I think Alvarez will finish him. But I'm really, really, really looking forward to this fight. This is the best fight in boxing for me, and it's good to see.
I'm curious what Dana White's going to be doing on the night. Like if he's got like a little screen that he watches the boxing on while Luke Rockhold's fighting, and then Luke's like yelling things at him, and he has no idea what happened, and he's like, yeah, Luke, just hold on a second, let me finish this fight. But either way, it's going to be an exciting weekend for fight fans. Guys, make sure to follow Sean on Twitter at SeanSheehanBA, and of course, Severe MMA, one of the greatest podcasts out there in the world today, the #1 European MMA podcast. I feel like it could be definitely one of the top MMA podcasts in the world. You guys should change that description. Quickly, the new logo, Sean. A lot of controversy there. People have protested on the streets. The pitchforks are out. There's some fire out there. There's a guy with possibly the old Severe MMA tattoo. That's like, what did I do this? There's a new logo now. So give us the breakdown. How do you feel about this new logo? And I guess, what does the future hold for it?
I have to break down the logo. I know I like it. That's all I know about it. John Sheehan, no relation actually, John Sportstrade. So he's a guy, he doesn't actually live too far away from me, but he designed it for us. I like it. We have a few different iterations of it. We're kind of deciding. There's one with a red hand. Check it out at Severe MMA Pod on Twitter. Tell us what you think of it. But yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I think we needed a new look. We're still going to be, we have one of our little cartoons as well. We're still going to be using that as well. But that's going to be our main logo from now on. I like it. I like the change.
Very nice. Well, as we finish up, as we wrap up, we also want to thank some of the other guests on the program. Valentina Shevchenko, her UFC fight, of course, was close, but a Submission Radio debut. That was warm in the heart. It was great to have her on the show for the first time. Coach Mike Winkeljohn. The guy's been on the show 100 times. I stuff up the name in the wrap-up. It's so much fun having him on the program. Dan Kelly, of course, a friend of the show, someone that we've had so much fun watching in the Octagon, and he is back in Sydney, so make sure to give him the support that he deserves. And check out his gym, the Resilience Training Centre over here in Footscray, Melbourne. And, of course, Urijah Faber, who's a Submission Radio alumcast, but he's been on the program so many times before. And it's always fun chatting it up with Urijah Faber, who's now a movie star in a movie with The Rock. I wonder if I wonder if they do a movie in Australia. Maybe we can be some of the mercenaries there. Maybe we can analyze some of the killings in the movie.
If they see us, probably not.
Probably not. No. Well, we could be. I feel like I could be like a motel owner or something at this point. Like I'm a bit overweight, not looking too good. Maybe I could be like a serial killer. I don't know. But let us know, Urijah Faber, if there's any opportunities to be in your movies in the future, guys. Like we mentioned, freezing down here. We hope you're having a good week wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week for another dose of Submission Radio. Stay safe.